We're about to get what is possibly a unique backstage view of how actors prepare for a Shakespearean role. Now, some of this work begins before rehearsals. Some of it goes on throughout an actor's life. I meet and have worked with many actors who approach Shakespeare and other classics thinking, how can I impose what I know, my own experience, upon this language, upon the character? Yet I believe the secret is to get inside the language and allow it to take you into places you yourself have never dreamt you'd reach, places where you've certainly never been before. And yet it takes hard work and practice to master this technique of speaking Shakespeare. Staying open and alive to his rhythms and imagery requires the same kind of flexibility and training that I imagine a skier must need to prepare for the rigors of the slopes. Both he and the actor require similar agility and sensitivity. Now, this workshop will focus on the particular vocabulary which takes us into the different worlds which Shakespeare creates. We'll look at the beginning of Hamlet and the beginning of the Midsummer Night's Dream, two very different worlds set up in the very first scenes. We'll also see how a speech is structured. There's nothing more terrifying for me than to be faced with a 30 or 40 line soliloquy, and it's only when I begin to understand the structure, the questions, the premise, the reasoning, and the conclusion, that the speech begins to open up and becomes less fearsome. We'll also hear how the sounds of the language are an intrinsic part of its meaning.
The first scene in a Shakespeare play always takes us straight to the core of that particular world. That is the genius of the language. For instance, in the first scene of King Lear, the language is totally to do with quantity. How much? How much do you love me? He asks Goneril and Regan. And to their very effusive answers, he says, then you can have this much land. It is as if he has got property and love mixed in his mind, and he has no real judgment left. And this continues until he says to Cordelia, what can you say to draw a third, more opulent than your sisters? Speak. And Cordelia answers, nothing. And that one word, nothing, rings out. It is the antithesis of all that has gone before. And this mixing of property and love informs us that there is something deeply wrong within Lear as a person. And when Cordelia says that word, nothing, it is as if she is trying to shock him into sense. Each play, you'll find, tells us so much, so simply, by the undercurrent of the words, what we call today the subtext. I suppose I would like this work to be called Hearing Shakespeare, because the work is about hearing what is in there. We've got to hear what is that world, really. It takes away your responsibility to do everything. I think that's the important thing, that we hear something in the language which feeds us, so that when we do start acting it in situ on the stage, that will also help us. It will be us, ballast, as it were. It'll earth us, so that we don't have to do everything in the text. We don't have to make everything clear. We've got to know what we mean in our minds. We've got to be specific. But it will reach more than you think if we are like that. Let us look at the beginning of two plays. First, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and then Hamlet. The dream first.
nuptial hour
draws on apace. 4 happy days bring in
another moon. But oh, methinks how slow.
This old moon wanes, she lingers my desires.
Like to a stepdame or a dowager.
Long withering out a young
Here,
man's
the
revenue.
group is reading the first 3 speeches of the play between Theseus and Hippolyta. Each actor reading a line round in the circle so they can listen without any pressure to make sense, something which is always a very freeing thing to do. And then we will do some exercises with it.
Turn melancholy forth to funerals. The pale companion is not for our pomp.
Hippolyta, I wooed thee with my sword.
And won thy love, doing thee injuries.
But I will wed thee in another key.
With pomp, with triumph, and with reveling.
Just read that last line again.
With pomp, with triumph, and with reveling.
Right, anything you want to say about that?
Sounds happy.
A lot of
Yeah,
snappy
it's
words.
quite
and-
different from what we've been doing.
Yes, though, to me, the beginning of this, like, almost the, I say it, they're taking us into a dream. To me, I feel, it's like the spell is being cast
Very good,
now,
yeah.
fair Hippolyta. I feel like I'm being pulled into the dream of it, sort of.
Yes. And really that language, that vocabulary would not take us into any other play. This language takes us into this world. It is the world of the play, and it wouldn't take us anywhere else.
The words that jump out are amazing.
What?
Draws, nuptial,
Yes.
wanes, moon,
Linger.
silver,
Yes.
lingering, heaven, bow.
With that in mind, can I have the 2 who are doing Hippolyta, and can you others not look at your page at all anymore? And just repeat these words, which are to do with sexuality.
Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws apace. 4 happy days bring in another moon. But oh, methinks how slow this old moon wanes. She lingers my desires, like to a stepdame or a dowager, long withering out a young man's revenue.
4 days will quickly steep themselves in night. 4 nights will quickly dream away the time. And then the moon, like to a silver bow, new bent in heaven, shall behold the night of our solemnity.
Go, Philostrate.
illustrate.
Stir up the Athenian youth, merriment. Awake the pert in nimble spirit of mirth. Turn melancholy forth to funerals, that the pale companion is not for our pomp. Hippolyta, I wooed thee with my sword, and won thy love, and won thy love, doing thee injuries. But I will wed thee in another key, with pomp, with triumph, and with reveling.
I'll take all of the above.
It's extraordinary, isn't it, when you really listen to that language, and you listen to it so much, and you take it all for granted, and you accept it. I'd like you to go into you go into that corner, and you go into that corner, and right, and I'd like 3 handmaidens to go with Lolita, and 3 gentlemen behind. The first time through, speak as much as what your protagonist is speaking as possible without reading it. You can put everything down. I want them to feel that there is a sort of property in the language, but we'll ask them what they feel afterwards. But then, when I do it again through, when I ask them to get together, I want you to stop them getting together until they get to I wooed thee with the pale companion is not for our pomp, and then just allow them. Okay. All right.
Is this a paranoid exercise?
Speak when you're ready.
Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws apace. 4 happy days bring in another moon. But oh, methinks how slow this old moon wanes. She lingers my desires like to a stepdam or a dowager, long withering out a young man's revenue.
4 days will quickly steep themselves in night. 4 nights will quickly dream away the time. And then the moon, like to a silver bow, new bent in heaven, shall behold the night of our solemnity.
Go, Philostrate. Stir up the Athenian youth to merriment.
What I want you to feel is that there is a property in the language. Does that make any sense? That you open it out and it's public speaking, basically, isn't it? It's bigger, and that's all it's about.
All of the feminine and all of the masculine of the world are
Yes,
coming at each other
yes.
rather than two people. And if I were playing the part, I'd feel intimidated. How do I embody this much feminine, this much men, you know? But to imagine that behind me would help.
So the exercise isn't entirely stupid.
But also the other sense you got in it was that they were unashamedly in love with each other. That they weren't holding anything back, that it was like, I'm giving all of myself to you, and I'm giving all of myself back
that's
to you.
brilliant.
To me, it was the support of the people behind that lift you, and like it sort of felt like it lifted my words closer to her. But
That's
no,
all I
never-
wanted you to feel, in fact.
I felt
Now
this.
what I want you to do is to do it one more time and just try and move towards each other.
Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws apace. 4 happy days bring in another moon. But oh, methinks how slow this old moon wanes. She lingers my desires like to a stepdam or a dowager, long withering out a young man's revenue.
4 days will quickly steep themselves in night.
Now this was fun and perhaps a bit absurd, but is useful to do something like this because it gives the actor permission to find the extravagance of the language without being self-conscious and judgmental. Pulling each other back or putting some sort of resistance there will help us to experience physically what is at stake, the underlying danger in the language. So that when you come back to being serious, to making reason with it, you still keep something of its size and something of the delight in expressing it. We must always know what the language costs.
But I will wed thee in another key, with pomp, with triumph, and with reveling.
Not a chance.
Yeah, does that feel good? Now without that, keep separate, but without all that. But really, could you feel how those vowels and everything were lengthening it out?
Oh, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Now, for serious, for seriously. Okay, right, go.
Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws apace. 4 happy days bring in another moon. But oh, methinks how slow this old moon wanes. She lingers my desires, like to a stepdam or a dowager, long withering out a young man's revenue.
4 days will quickly steep themselves in night. 4 nights will quickly dream away the time. And then the moon, like a silver bow, new bent in heaven, shall behold the night of our solemnity.
Go, Philostrate. Stir up the Athenian youth to merriment. Awake the nimble and pert spirit of mirth. Turn melancholy forth to funerals. The pale companion is not for our pomp. Hippolyta, I wooed thee with my sword, and won thy love by doing thee injuries, but I will wed thee with another key, with pomp, with triumph, and with reveling.
Great. Really what we've done is tried to release the language in a physical way. You heard these vowels being extravagant, and it is that extravagance that we have to keep after, because it is, the words are saying a huge amount. I mean, they are like, keeping the lid on the pot, as it were. And so we need to be able to feel truthful when we do that extravagance. And I think that's what we have to keep working between. Going to one extreme and then coming back to the thought and then really opening it out again like that. This danger erupts in a different way when Aegeus speaks. He is pleading for the right to dispose of his daughter in any way he chooses. The rhythm is cruel. We hear his agitation in the way his thoughts are broken up and his care to give due reverence to the Duke, my noble Duke, etc. His rhythms are very different from Theseus and Hippolyta. What I'd like to do now is just look very specifically at the structure. Can we just speak the words which grab us as he says it? Just the violent words, as it were, that could be violent. Okay, right.
Happy be Theseus, our renowned Duke.
Thanks, good Aegeus. What's the news with thee?
Full of vexation come I, with complaint against my child, my daughter Hermia. Stand forth, Demetrius. Stand forth. My noble lord, this man hath my consent to marry her.
Only the violent words, yes.
Stand forth, Lysander! Stand forth. And my gracious Duke, this man hath bewitched the bosom of my child. Thou, Lysander, thou hast given her rhymes and interchanged love tokens with my child. Thou hast by moonlight at her window sung with feigning voice verses of feigning love, and stoned the expression of her fantasy with bracelets of thy hair, rings, gauds, conceits, knacks, trifles, nosegays, sweetmeats, messengers of strong prevailing in unhardened youth. With cunning hast thou filched my daughter's heart, turned her obedience, which is due to me, to stubborn harshness. And my gracious Duke, be it so, she will not here before your grace consent to marry with Demetrius. I beg the ancient privilege of Athens, as she is mine, I may dispose of her, which shall be either to this gentleman or to her death, according to our law, immediately provided in this case.
A word like filched. You know, Iago uses that word to Othello, and it's not just stolen, is it?
He's like he's just found out and he's got all these rings, gauds, conceits in this chest of drawers.
And those are the things that have bewitched her. So they're dangerous things, aren't they? One thing I think we do forget in Shakespeare is that when you talk about sin, you really mean sin, which is something quite concrete, which we don't know, which we don't view it today in the same way. Bewitched is something absolutely real and quite frightening,
This
isn't
makes
it?
him very dangerous.
Yes,
Which
this
is
is what
so
I was.
disturbing because
Yeah.
it is faintly ridiculous.
Yeah.
After what we saw before, but this makes him so dangerous.
Yeah. And we have to take that very seriously because there are people who do believe in being bewitched, you know. So it is something that we can't speak about lightly.
You expect Lysander, when he said she'll die if she doesn't, consent, you expect Lysander to say, look, I can't have this. She, save her life, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's like they've got this thing and nobody is letting go, and it's like that. But he doesn't say, no, okay.
And that is the world we're being taken into, that the cruelty of that world, the societal values of it, which come down from the Duke. That is where all that language takes us into the whole society. We have to be clear about that. I really feel very strongly that we should just do this exercise on the beginning of Hamlet, because it's an amazing piece of writing. It's usually done with a lot of soldiers and a lot of military stuff. I want to see if we can get somewhere in it just by listening to it. This exercise is totally about listening and what we hear. So the actors are going to different spots in this room, space, and we're going to first of all whisper it through, hear rather, what that does to the language. How you speak at night in the dark is a different thing, isn't it? That is also a mystery. It's also part of the mystery. Right, so can you go to your marks, as it were? Yeah. Okay.
Nay, answer me. Stand and unfold yourself. Bernardo? You come most carefully upon your hour.
It is now struck 12. Get me to bed, Francisco.
For this relief, much thanks. 'Tis bitter cold, and I am sick at heart.
Have you had quiet guard?
Not a mouse stirring.
Well, good night. If you do meet Horatio and Marcellus, the rivals of my watch, bid them make haste.
I think I hear them. Stand ho! Who is there?
Friends to this ground, and liegemen to the Dane.
Give you good night.
Oh, farewell, honest soldier. Who hath relieved you?
Bernardo hath my place. Give you good night.
Hola, Bernardo. Say, what is Horatio there?
A piece of him.
Welcome, Horatio. Welcome, good Marcellus.
What? Has this thing appeared again tonight?
I have seen nothing. Horatio says 'tis but our fantasy, and will not let belief take hold of him, touching this dreaded sight twice seen of us. Therefore I have entreated him along with us to watch the minutes of this night, that if, again, this apparition come, he may approve our eyes and speak to it.
Tush, tush! 'Twill not appear.
Sit down a while, and let us once again assail your ears that are so fortified against our story, what we 2 nights have seen.
Well, sit we down, and let us hear Bernardo speak of this.
Last night of all, when yon same star that's westward from the pole had made his course to illume that part of heaven where now it burns, Marcellus and myself, the bell then striking 1.
Peace!
Look where it comes again. In the same figure like the king that's dead.
Thou art a scholar. Speak to it, Horatio.
Look. Looks are not like the king. Mark, Horatio.
Most like. It harrows me with fear and wonder.
It would be spoke to.
Speak to it, Horatio. What art thou that usurps this time of night, together with that fair and warlike form in which the majesty of buried Denmark did sometimes march? By heaven, I charge thee, speak. It is offended.
See, it stalks away.
Stay. Speak. Speak. I charge thee, speak. 'Tis gone and will not answer.
Right. It is very dangerous, isn't it?
Everybody's trying to establish something, so nobody's sure of anything.
Well, that is the important thing, isn't it? Because they're not sure where they stand.
It's a play about power, too, so...
Yeah. It's about insecurity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is really what it is. It's almost like it's prose, but it isn't. So there are a lot of spaces in between because you've only got who's there. And then there's a space. Nay, answer me, stand and unfold yourself. That's the whole line.
And a single
Long live the king. Bernardo. He. You come most carefully, and then it's back into that. And then, have you had quiet guard? Not a mouse. You know, there is that sense of suspense all the way through it. But practically from the actor's point of view, when you whisper what happens, you're taking your perception of yourself away. Now, I think that we all have a secret voice somewhere inside us, which we lost when we started to go to school because we had to present ourselves in some way. But when you take that logic, your perception of yourself away, which is making sense of everything and making sure that everybody understands, you hear something in the words which is different. Does that make any sense? You hear what the words are doing. You start lifting the words through. And it has the most extraordinary effect on what the words can do, that they do more than you think they can do.
I mean, it's a strange thing to do because your normal thing that you would think would be the thing that you would want to do is actually, if you're trying to reach somebody on the other side of the room, is to raise your voice so they can hear you.
Yeah.
But actually to take your voice away and whisper to someone on the other side of the room seems slightly incongruous. It's like, well, if he can hear you, everybody can.
Right.
So why whisper?
Focus what you're saying directly at that person, so you're almost trying to get it past all these other people.
I had an image in the middle of it that we were almost on some tower. So these are our watches, and we can't leave them.
Yeah.
But yet we have to talk about
There's
them.
not a law. There's a law that you have to whisper because you can't make noise if you're on the watch or something. You'll lose your head.
Yeah.
But that his watch happens to be that far away, and we do have to discuss this.
Right.
And you know, the people are here, and also the ghost. I mean, we don't want to.
What
so
ghost?
It makes it seem like there is somebody else there that you don't want to hear what you're talking about.
Someone's always listening in this world.
Yes.
Someone's always behind a door.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
And it sets it up right here.
That's great. The ghost in every play.
There is a ghost, yes.
Yeah, right. And when Horatio finally does come in and see Hamlet, it makes it all the more kind of
Yeah.
exciting that this
Yeah.
is obviously an obvious conspiracy. And all of this pomp, and suddenly one of the conspirators comes in, takes the prince, and says,
It's very closed.
It's
Very
such a
dangerous thing to know.
intimate.
Situation.
Because it says you come most carefully upon your hour. Carefully.
In good time, I mean, promptly, I suppose.
Yes. Promptly.
But
Yes.
maybe that's why Francisco's there, is that so that there's someone who leaves, so then once he's gone, we go
Yes.
and come together. That there's sort of a hello, okay, he's gone. What has this thing appeared again?
In the fear, there's a very good humour in the fear of when the ghost arrives going, you've read a book, speak to me.
It's a relief when the ghost comes. You know, and when he went, oh no, come back. This is terrible because the tension is incredible up till then. And you feel the relief that I don't know what that relief is about.
The important thing is that we hear what is happening in that language. I mean, that wonderful thing about, have you had quiet guard and it takes a moment, not a mouse stirring. I mean, it has its own music. It has its own sort of pace, its own spaces round it, which actually give it the suspense. Obviously, it isn't whispered. I'm only whispering to give us a feeling of that. But it is in those spaces between the language that the suspense is. And just the directness of it. You don't have to put anything on it. It can be quite plain, but it's there in the space, in the spaces between the language. There's a scream there, the scream between the words. When we take our voice away and simply whisper, we hear everything differently. We hear the references to this thing, the other. We hear our secret response to what is happening in the language. I know I keep talking about this, but it is of the essence. How the vowels can stretch or be very short, the sharpness of or the fullness of the consonants, voiced or unvoiced. We hear the rhythms and suspensions in the line, like this, not a mouse stirring. By heaven I charge thee, speak. 'Tis gone and will not answer. This thing, a piece of him, harrows me with fear and wonder. But so often we drown these textures by overlaying them with meaning, by that voice which we rely on to make sense. And when we do this, we lose a certain mystery, the mystery in the language. In the next two pieces, we're going to focus on how the imagery, that is to say, the pictures we use to describe our feelings, tell us so much about the character. We will find exercises to do to draw this out. First, let us look at Brutus in Julius Caesar. He, along with the other conspirators, is contemplating the killing of Caesar, and we see him here thinking it out on his own. Should action be taken or not? It is a moral question. It is wonderful to hear what I call the ladders of thought by which he argues out his problem, his dilemma. How he has to justify himself that he is doing right. He has to climb the ladder of his images, of his thought, to come to a decision. Now, in everyday life, we all use images. By this I mean pictures to describe our feelings. In Shakespeare, the choice of image tells us so much about the character and the character's state of mind. It is where the character is living. Let's listen and find out what we hear. What interests me very much is how our inner landscape informs our outer one, informs what we do. And I think this is a very good illustration of what that is doing. Can we just listen to it and just very gently, without reading maybe, mutter images that strike you, that grab you? Try to do it through listening and not through reading it.
It must be by his death. And for my part, I know no personal cause to spurn at him, but for the general. He would be crowned. How that might change his nature, there's the question. It is the bright day that brings forth the adder, and that craves weary walking. Crown him that, and then I grant we put a sting in him that at his will he may do danger with. The abuse of greatness is when it disjoins remorse from power. And to speak truth of Caesar, I have not known when his affections swayed more than his reason. But 'tis a common proof that lowliness is young ambition's ladder, whereto the climber upward turns his face. But when he once attains the utmost round, he then unto the ladder turns his back, looks in the clouds, scorning the base degrees by which he did ascend. So Caesar may, then lest he may prevent. And since the quarrel will bear no colour for the thing he is, fashion it thus, that what he is augmented would run to these and these extremities. And therefore think him as a serpent's egg, which, hatched, would, as his kind, grow mischievous and kill him in the shell. It's quite difficult to follow the dialogue.
Yes, it is.
Both the internal dialogue and the external dialogue is quite difficult to find. Over the days I've been panicking over it.
Great.
It really does seem to be a case where he's persuading himself. He hasn't made up his
Yes, it's still this question about when you do make up your mind, the moment you do. Have you made up your mind before you start speaking, and then you argue it through, firm it up, and all those things?
It's like if it were done, if it were done when 'tis done.
Yes.
It's that kind of complexity.
It's like his imagination takes him to
Yes. This is really, it's where imagination takes us, isn't it? Sorry, carry on with that.
There's a lot of snake images.
Yes.
Once you've called somebody a snake, then your logical conclusion is that they're going to kill you.
Yes.
It's
where those images take us, isn't it? And just as I believe there is no such thing as a disinterested action, perhaps there's no such thing as a disinterested image.
And you also get the feeling that when he's spurn at him, that he means it. And therefore, to a certain extent, for the rest of the speech, he's trying to find a justifiable reason to dislike this guy.
He's making up things about it.
Yeah, he's trying to...
totally making up things because he says he's never known him not to use reason, but once he gets power, he'll start using emotion and not reason. Yeah. And that's something that he's, just kind of formulating because there's no proof of that.
It's the whole thing of what if. Yeah. What if when this happens to him, he's like that? And what if when this happens to him, he's like that? And so, just in case, kill him now.
Yeah, let's kill him now.
It's like Herod killing all firstborns. It's like that.
In a way, it's almost as though the decision subconsciously has been very firmly made, and the rest is to bring it to the conscious level and justify.
Yes, and I think this is the question we always have to ask. And I'm not saying there's any answer, because the actor must choose, must take that choice, him or herself.
There's also a thing you said yesterday about the first line laying down the premise of
Yes.
the dialogue.
Yes.
And that his first thing is, it must be by his death.
Yes.
This
And it
must
could be a
what is the-
question almost, couldn't it?
Yeah.
That's the important.
He tries to argue it in a logical way, but actually his logic is fueled by emotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the images are so powerful that the images affect him and his thinking.
To me, it begs the question, how much of it is a dialogue between him and himself, and if he's on stage and using the audience exists, so is it to almost assign a meaning or a personality to them and get their permission for something you've already
Could be,
decided,
yeah.
or is it something you're working out by yourself?
Because it very much depends on the convention that is put up during the play.
This speech is about Brutus himself. It's like Brutus looking in the mirror and seeing himself. It's like when artists say all self-portraits are really about the art. So all portraits, not self-portraits, but all portraits are about themselves.
That's very good.
You know, they might paint the Mona Lisa, but it's really about him. It's not about the Mona Lisa. You know, and it's almost like saying we would maybe get the underscore of that speech is about him. Because Brutus is an honourable man. He is a noble man. His vanity comes through when he says, because Julius Caesar was from low status. It's all about him. It's his vanity.
Just question him gently as he goes. Just heckle him a little bit.
It must be by his death. And for my part, I know no personal cause to spurn at him, but for the general. He would be crowned. How that might change his nature, there's the question. It is the bright day that brings forth the adder, and that craves weary walking. Crown him that...
I have asked them to heckle him in order to disturb the rhythm of his thoughts, disturb their logic and make them more surprising, for him to be surprised by them. It will make him have to be more precise with the words he chooses to define his feelings that much more clearly. This will then feed the action and the physicality of the language and open up the questions. The questions about how do we make up our minds? Who do we talk to when we talk to ourselves?
The base degrees by which he did ascend. So Caesar may. Then, lest he may prevent. And since the quarrel will bear no colour for the thing he is, fashion it thus, that what he is augmented would run to these and these extremities, and therefore think him as the serpent's egg, which hatched would, as his kind, grow mischievous, and kill him in the shell.
What did you feel about that?
I feel like to imagine it while you're acting would be brilliant.
Yeah. How did that feel to you?
That was very helpful. In order to actually bring out the internal conversation that he's having with himself.
Conversation is the right word.
The
Not
sense
dialogue,
of
conversation is right. Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, because he's showing, he's continually giving images. Well, it's in certain places, images of goodness, and deliberately balancing them with badness. When he says that it's the bright day. It's a bright day, but bright days bring out the adder, and therefore, walk carefully. It's a constant juxtapositions of all of the images that he's choosing to pick out.
There is a resistance in your mind to this. That's the thing, isn't it?
I mean, it's almost like he's having the mirror image is very good, that he's having a fight with himself.
Yes.
Well, it's the obstacles. I mean, basically, that's what, speaking methodese, these obstacles are created that you can imagine, like, we were saying, it would be wonderful then to have this exercise to help you when you're standing there on stage by yourself.
And it also
to spur you on.
then can't help but move from being in any way reflective to jumping to being ultimately active.
Exactly.
And which is, I loved listening to you do it on the floor. Actually, I think somewhere in the middle is probably the best. This was almost too. It's like I like you thinking it through, but it's such obviously an active speech.
Yeah, but it's also I can't remember what the exercise it was we did earlier. But the fear of actually speaking the words, actually to have these thoughts. It was the Macbeth thing, if it were done when 'tis done. Actually to contemplate assassination in itself is treasonous. The sense of even thinking these things are as dangerous as doing them.
But it's actually your first statement is you've jumped into the breach by saying it must be by his death. The rest of the speech is you kind of justifying that statement.
It's a bungee jump, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to take it.
By the end, he convinces himself that he's saying something brilliant.
Yeah.
Starts off doubting it. Actually, no, that's a really good image, and that it's brilliant. And yes, and, you know, it's like
It's wonderful how when he introduces the image of the ladder, and he follows it completely through. It goes on for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines almost. And it goes all the way through. I mean, it's kind of like a ladder, kind of like the way he creates the image, and like that last argument kind of rolls and rolls and rolls, and it kind of builds and builds, and then it kind of comes to such a conclusion at the end. Kill him in his shell.
He gives himself a hook, where you imagine that when he actually goes to kill Caesar, what he's thinking is he's a serpent's egg, and that's the final hook that he's given himself after all the talking.
That is where he is, isn't it? That's where his psyche is.
He's not a man, he's a serpent's egg. He's not a man, he's a serpent's egg, and I can kill a serpent.
It's quite frightening, really, that rhetoric can be used for self-deception and that.
The last line is a half line. It feels to me like I've got it now, so get it.
Kill him.
Don't think one more thought or I'll lose it.
Nothing else. That's it. He's a serpent's egg, and we're going to kill him. Just dead. That's it.
Now, nobody say anything.
Yeah, nobody say anything.
Don't you think it works on us as well? It makes us think about our own ambition, what we are like.
Oh, yes.
So it's very democratic in a way, isn't it? Because it makes us think, well, yes, could we be like that? But we're not in a position
Well, I
that
think
Caesar's
he's
in.
always questioning us. I mean, hopefully,
Because he
it
speaks to the
always does
senators.
question, doesn't it?
And it's about, you know, what are you in this for? For fame or for
But it also
good
questions, you know,
political
how
reasons?
people like Hitler got to power, doesn't it? You know, and all those horrendous
Questions our own
things.
consciences.
Yes.
And that's what's really powerful about it.
When do you say no? It's saying, isn't it? When do any of us say no?
He should be
When do actors say no? You know, I mean, all these exercises I keep repeating, but it's important that they're just ways in to finding, first of all, the ambiguity and all, because that's what's so wonderful about Shakespeare. It's speaking to so many sides of us all the time. So many rooms inside us. Now to a speech from Romeo and Juliet. Juliet's soliloquy when she is told that Romeo has slain Tybalt. She is being torn between her love for Romeo, her husband, and her love for Tybalt, her cousin, whom she also loves as part of her family, which is very close.
Now, for me, sitting here doing this, I have to say this out loud because this is a working thing.
Yeah.
Because this is such an emotional speech, and I can't just go flying into this.
No.
You just want me to read this.
I just want you to read it without even worrying about it.
Just
you know.
say.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, serpent heart, hid with a flowering face. Did ever dragon keep so fair a cave? Beautiful tyrant, fiend angelical, dove-feathered raven, wolvish ravening lamb, despised substance of divinest show, just opposite to what thou justly seemst, a damned saint, an honorable villain. O nature, what hadst thou to do in hell when thou didst bower the spirit of a fiend in mortal paradise of such sweet flesh? Was ever book containing such vile matter so fairly bound? Oh, that deceit should dwell in such a gorgeous palace.
It's antithesis, really, we're talking about, and so nearly, I mean, all Shakespeare is built on that antithesis. And what is interesting about these opposites, that it presents us with a whole spectrum of experience immediately, just in that. Just do it one more time, and you repeat the antitheses as you go.
O serpent heart, hid with a flowering face, did ever dragon keep so fair a cave? Beautiful tyrant, fiend angelic.
This speech is full of antithesis, ideas which are opposite, images which are opposite. And this tells us something of the extremity of her feelings. Let's listen.
A damned saint, an honorable villain. Oh, Nature, what hadst thou to do in hell when thou didst bower the spirit of a fiend in mortal paradise of such sweet flesh? Was ever book containing such vile matter so fairly bound? Oh, that deceit should dwell in such a gorgeous palace.
There is in the kind of the emotion of it, a real kind of sense of a kind of
Yes.
It's very kind of open. It's like a wound.
Yes. It's like split open.
Yeah,
yes.
it's a real. It's
yes.
like the whole thing is done on a kind of a whale.
And you don't know what to think. You're not left with anything to hang on to except a feeling.
It's almost like when something shocks you and the illusion, someone that seemed this is now this. And for Juliet, to me, it's like the purity of love and the innocence of it now being marred.
Yeah.
And you must deal with that on the moment.
Yeah.
To say, that's not the way it was, and to struggle with it. This thing with like beautiful tyrant and it's fiend, angelic. It's like I feel yes, no, he's wonderful. I hate him, but you know, he's that all that.
Yes. And it's a wonderful image of it in such a gorgeous palette. And it reminds one of Gallop Apace when I bought the mansion of a love but not possessed it. Yeah, I want you to try and get out of this circle.
I'll try and get out.
Yeah. Okay, right. Right.
Oh, serpent heart, hid with a flowering face. Did ever dragon keep so fair a cave? Beautiful tyrant, fiend, angelical, dove-feathered raven, wolvish, ravening lamb, despise substance of departing show. Just opposite what thou justly seemst. A damned saint. An honorable villain! Oh, nature! What hadst thou to do in hell when thou didst bower the spirit of a fiend? In mortal paradise of such sweet flesh! Whatever book containing such vile matter, so fairly bound. Oh, that deceit should dwell in such a gorgeous palace.
I can't bear it.
It's all right. But it works.
Yes.
So many of his finding words.
Yes,
It's
that's
all right.
exactly what came out, that you had to find the words to get through.
Is it to use the words, or sort of hoping the words will open?
If
I choose the right words,
Yeah.
I will be out of this hell. I mean,
Yes, I
making it
mean,
up
what it
horribly
was
as I go along.
wonderful about that, it put the whole woman's condition in there,
By
wasn't it? That
closing,
you're closing
and
out.
how can I get out of this and still maintain what I used to? It's like I
Yes.
know how wonderful he is, and now it's not wonderful, but I can hold on to how wonderful. Can't get out.
Yeah.
Can't get out of the thought that this is bad. He killed Tip. You know what I'm saying? And it's like the word, like it coming in through the action, made me then feel it on the inside, rather than the outside feeling it.
Yes, and
When you feel
understanding
that
it
way-
from the outside.
You feel that way. It just seems impossible that you'll feel any better. You know, that you'll ever get out of that black hole.
It's like when you were scared to start with and you said, Tess, this is a really emotional speech.
Yeah.
But Shakespeare is so good that he actually, out of that emotion, he channels the emotion and gives you the images.
Yeah.
And the images are what...
Bring you to it.
And which in a funny way take away the dramatic kind of, I don't know, indulgence of what might happen if you do it. Because he's actually giving you... It's like you're trying to stop the scene be dramatic.
Yeah.
By you're holding on to these images, and that's all you have to hold on to. That's or else it would just become this huge emotional sort of scream. But
Yes.
they keep bringing you down. They keep sort of saying, "No, I can work this through. I can work this through." And
Yes.
Shakespeare gives you those images that come out of that.
Yeah. Okay, but
It's
my
weird.
my feeling too is like we could have what you just said. You have to have all that going on to keep you anchored,
Yes.
Gives you this
Rather
maybe
than
the
making it a
stillness and
rhetorical, poetic
Yeah.
reading.
Of course.
Which I think is always
Exactly, you see, and I'm not, So can you sit in the middle?
Yes.
And can you just walk around her so you're like threatening for her, but you do it quite quietly there.
Serpent heart, hid with a flowering face. Did ever dragon keep so fair a cave? Beautiful tyrant, fiend angelical, dove-feathered raven, wolvish ravening lamb, despised substance of divinest show, just opposite to what thou justly seemst, a damned saint, an honorable villain. O nature, what hadst thou to do in hell when thou didst bower the spirit of a fiend in mortal paradise of such sweet flesh? Has ever book containing such vile matters so fairly bound? Oh, that deceit should dwell in such a gorgeous palace.
What I really felt on that one was that she was innocent, and that she was beginning to lose that innocence, and that's the terrible struggle.
Yeah.
Because each image she really does have to find.
Yeah.
Because if it just comes to you
You're
straight
right,
away, then
yeah.
you've lost your innocence already.
Exactly.
Whereas
Yes.
that's her. You know,
And also you heard the cry in the sense of in the images of the kind of breathing. It was like, you know, when people are really, really upset that or crying, that things come out in like spurts. So it's kind of like you're controlling it, and then you're bringing your breath to the point where you can just say that, and then it's too much, and then you can say that, and then you have to bring it back, and then you can say that, and then you bring it back, and then she finally, after the really almost the longest spurt that she has, at the end of it is,
Yeah, and
it's
it
just
really
like
came from
empties
right
it all
down there,
out.
you see.
Thank you.
That's been a wonderful exercise. It has actually fulfilled so many things about how you have to feel wild. I mean, the wildness of this feeling, and yet, if it is contained, you know.
And looking for the word, looking for the images.
Yes,
as Toby said.
exactly. It almost gets wilder because it is contained.
That's so.
It?
I never thought. I never experienced it. Thank
No,
you.
it's really good. Okay. Let's just go over some of these antitheses again. Beautiful tyrant, wolfish ravening lamb, fiend angelical, serpent heart hid with a flowering face, damned saint, honorable villain. She is truly distraught. The extremity of her language says it all. Now let's look at another speech which, like Brutus, shows us a character thinking through a problem and looking at the possibility of action or non-action. Macbeth. Listen for that word, if, and for the short vowels and sharp consonants at the beginning.
If it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. If the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his surcease success, that but this blow might be the be-all and the end-all, here, but here upon this bank and shoal of time, we'll jump the life to come. But in these cases we still have judgment here, that we but teach bloody instructions, which, being taught, return to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. He's here in double trust. First, as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed, then as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself.
Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off, and pity, like a naked newborn babe, striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim, horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other.
What I'd just like to do is one exercise with it, all right. What I'd like you to do is go to one side of the room and crouch. But when I say run, move to somewhere else and crouch and do the next bit.
Really?
Is that all right with you?
Well, I'm not good at crouching.
Well, you don't have to crouch.
No, I mean, I could, you just like that, you mean? Make him
No, no.
Yeah,
You
please,
can do
please.
it.
Exactly what we
Maybe,
need.
don't crouch. Just run to somewhere else.
If it were done when 'tis done, and 'twere well it were done quickly.
Run.
The assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his Circe's success.
Run.
But this blow might be the be-all and the end-all. Here, but here upon this bank and shoal of time, we jump the life to come.
Run.
But in these cases, we still have judgment here, that we but teach bloody instructions, which being taught return to plague the inventor.
Run.
This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips.
Run.
He's here in double trust. First as I am his kinsman, and his subject strong, both against the deed.
Run.
Then as his host, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself.
Run.
Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off.
Run.
Pity, like a naked newborn babe striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind.
Run.
I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other.
Great. Yeah. Okay, so what about that?
Well, it was what you said, which I didn't actually think would happen. Of course. Because why should I trust you?
No, no. No, don't, please.
From across the... No.
Absolutely.
No, it's fascinating because you said it's like going to different places in your head. And what's so hard about Shakespeare sometimes is the enormity of what you're contemplating. It's something we don't know how to often fill. Because it's, contemplating killing someone, although we've all felt that at some point, but it's not something, it's not a, so it does go to different places. It's a different place in your brain. And just like you said, if you move, it's like you're in a different place in your head, which actually started to feel like that.
You do go to different rooms, don't you, in your head? Quite a lot.
Yeah.
When I do film work and I have to do a really emotional scene, it just helps so much to stir the emotion inside of me when I just start, walking around the set or walking in circles or mumbling to myself and just getting my body moving. It gets everything else going as well.
But the important thing is about this is how he argues it through, isn't it? It is a debate going on in his head. And then you notice that thoughts are quite short at the beginning and then they get longer and longer and it becomes almost crazy, doesn't it? I mean, the images get so huge that he's almost lost there, and it takes Lady Macbeth to come on and say, bring him back down to sense.
Right.
But that is what I want you to find, the different spaces, the way, the energy that comes from thought to thought, from thought structure to thought structure, really.
Right. Okay, now the question is then, you know, to do an exercise like that and then to be able to be in one place.
And do it.
And do it.
Yes. I mean...
Do you have a pill?
I don't actually have a pill.
No.
But it's something that if one was working in a production, one would keep on going between, looking for the thought, the emotion, the motive, the character, the situation, and then just giving themselves over to speaking it in some way.
Right.
And gradually the two things hopefully come together, that one informs the other. But you're quite right, you've got to keep questioning it.
Victor, when we're in a lot of trouble, we contain it so well, kind of not letting other people see it. You might be going through absolute hell, but it doesn't look it. You still, don't you? You don't go like that?
Yeah, it's just getting to that place, sort of being able to. Well, it's acting, isn't it, really?
It's wonderful how quick, I mean, against the thing all tongues speak of him, I mean, how long that took. If it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. Can you feel, it's amazing, isn't it?
It made it seem urgent and important suddenly. He had to get there for the next thought, and that made me think, oh, someone's life is in the balance, rather than if he's contemplating it.
And that wonderful word, if, that he begins with, if it were done when 'tis done.
Another thing that was really interesting to notice is, like, Victor, you were saying that emotional obligation of these huge things that you wrestle with that these plays are about, particularly something like this, when you physicalize it by running from it and, you know, if it becomes a really active thing like the running or the paranoia in the Leontes, it takes the obligation off of you to somehow we create this emotion through tension, which just makes something more general.
That's the thing we have to learn, isn't it?
Yes. You go, okay, so just I'm running from this and I gotta get away from it. And then it becomes authentic because you're actually doing it. And then there's a million ways that you could actually do that in a more, you know, contained way.
Exactly, that's great. Yeah.
What? We'll talk later.
One I really appreciate.
Yeah, we'll have a drink later. I'll fix you up.
Right. So really what we have been looking at is how the thought develops within a speech, how the thought, and it grows and grows and grows and comes to some conclusion. And the texture of the language, basically, in that, isn't it? In both those speeches, the texture of the language is very different. The lengths of vowels, lengths of consonants. We hear how the whole speech is given its dynamic by that word, if. It is as though it is all worked out in the moment of speaking it, how the thoughts are sparked off. They jump-start us to another part of his world. Notice how the images get more elaborate and confused as he goes on, and we begin to doubt that he will go through with the action. And now to a very different movement of language. It is from Hamlet, and at the heart of the play. Ophelia has been devastated by her encounter with Hamlet, who has behaved like a madman. He has reviled her with his disgust, not only of herself, but of the world. She believes him to be mad. Just listen to the rhythm of this, and to the lengths in the vowels, and how that gives the movement of the lines, and what this tells us of her state of mind.
Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword, the expectancy and rose of the fair state, the glass of fashion and the mould of form, the observed of all observers, quite down. And I, of ladies most deject and wretched, that sucked the honey of his music vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason, like sweet bells jangled, out of tune and harsh, that unmatched form and feature of blown youth, blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen, see what I see.
I want you to go over to a corner and crouch. He is going to come round after you. He is Hamlet in your mind. And so
you want me to move?
And so when he gets near you, you have to run somewhere else. Stop speaking and run somewhere else, and then say the next bit. It's like you're running away from him.
Okay. Oh, what a noble mind is here, O throne. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword. The expectancy and rose of the fair state. The glass of fashion and the mould of form. The observed of all the observed of all observers, quite down. And I of ladies most deject and wretched, that sucked the honey of his music vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason. Like sweet bells jangled, out of time and harsh, that unmatched form and feature of blown youth, blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen. See what I see. It's a kind of dawning on you.
It's like there's something there in your head, isn't there, that is haunting, as it were. What did you make you feel?
Scared. It's like the words don't come out in their natural set form.
Yes.
It breaks things up for you.
Yes, and
It's
it becomes jagged in a way.
Yeah, there's another...
Yeah.
Because it is such a kind of... The form of the speech is so regular.
Somehow I couldn't even hear the words. It seemed like the other side, that all I heard was O and E. So that it was O, and then, like in Revelation, E. Like when you see something, it's like, oh, and then when it really dawns on you what it is, it's like E, like.
A lot of the exercises we're doing, too, the people who do them feel paranoid or afraid or scared, or, that's been a common reaction. Maybe because, well, when you face your fears, really powerful things come out of that.
Yeah.
You use things, you resort to instinctively to things that you would, in like a panic situation.
And also I think it's that sometimes the thing about Shakespeare is that partly because of the language, sometimes it protects you from the emotion.
Very good.
Of the piece, where it simply becomes a kind of well-spoken thing. Because it's beautifully spoken, what you do is you concentrate on speaking it beautifully, and you forget that actually what he's talking about is stuff that is raw emotion, whether that raw emotion is happiness or sadness or fear or passion. And because of the beautiful language, and you concentrate on speaking it well and concentrate on the iambic, that sometimes one of the things that happens quite a lot is that you separate from whatever the emotion is, not necessarily that it's a full-on emotion, but the danger is that it separates you from it as well.
Yeah, but in the end, we've got to put the two things together, like we are trying to do. But it seems like we've got to do that as well, and now just come in the middle and speak it, just with the idea of defining your feelings, because that in the end is what words do, isn't it? It defines your feelings, defines what you're thinking and define. So find that definition of it, almost as if you're writing it.
Oh, what a noble mind is here, o'erthrown. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword. The expectancy and rose of the fair state. the glass of fashion and the mould of form, the observed of all observers, quite down. And I, of ladies most deject and wretched, that sucked the honey of his music vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason, like sweet bells jangled out of tune and harsh, that unmatched form and feature of blown youth, blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen, see what I see.
Great, yes. It's language going through you, basically, isn't it? And yet defining it.
I was very struck by the line, the glass of fashion and the mould of form. Just thinking about the shape of the whole speech and how regular it is, and yet it indicates this terrible fear and turmoil.
Yes.
Extraordinary.
So she's actually, yes.
It is a very bizarre thing to say, really, to all those things. She sort of lists all his accomplishments.
That is what the court would expect, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see, I mean, it's very much because, in fact, they have heard all this, haven't they? Polonius has been hiding and he hears all this. Don't worry about telling us, we heard it all. It's horrendous, that, isn't it?
Mm. She said quite down this time. It was like a bell.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant, yes.
Bump, bump, boom. It sounded like a bell to me. And then when you said sweet bells jangled out of time, I thought, yeah, it is.
Oh, fabulous. That's great, yes.
It's really kind of delicate, though, isn't it? It's kind of like winter time. It's like crystal. You know, it's like just like, you know, snowflakes almost. They're just so kind of easily crushed. Are images like Paul was saying, the glass of what? You know, was it the glass of glass things?
Yes.
Things that are quite beautiful to look at, but can be crushed, and really easily.
Yes, and splinter.
Yeah. It's really.
And a blown youth as well. It's like it seems like a kind of, like a flower that's opened out and is about to go. You know, it's like the petals are going to fall off.
Yes. Now to Measure for Measure. In this speech, Isabella is working out a problem of conscience. Her brother Claudio has been condemned to die for having had unlawful intercourse with Juliet, who is pregnant by him. It is against the law. But Duke Angelo, who has enforced the law, lusts after Isabella and makes a bargain with her. If she will sleep with him, he will set her brother free. What irony. Her dilemma is that she must choose between her chastity and her brother's life. One or other has to be sacrificed.
O parents' mouths, that bear in them one and the self-same tongue, either condemnation or reproof, bidding all make courtesy to their will, hooking both right and wrong to the appetite, to follow as it rolls. As my brother, though he have fallen by prompture of blood, yet hath he in him such a mind of honor, that had he 20 heads to tend down on 20 bloody locks, he'd yield them up, before his sister should her body stoop to such a horrid pollution. Then Isabel lives chaste, and brother die. More than our brother is our chastity. I'll tell him yet of Angelo's request, and fit his mind to death for his soul's rest.
Yeah, anything about that?
It's very hard to enter into that possibility of, I mean, someone would die for chastity. It's so difficult for us to even deal with the thinking in this. And that word request of something so awful. So that sets up a world which we have to, as said, embrace. Otherwise, you can't begin to do the play.
It's about governing as well. The governing power. This government is corrupt. Her government, God, is incorrupt in the absolute sense. She will not corrupt herself the way he has corrupted himself in his office. She won't do it. She will die for what she believes, which is true of anyone who truly believes in anything. They will die for their belief, whether it be war or anything. The pain of it is it's your brother. And now her faith is being tested in this, what she believes.
It all relates to the society that you live in.
And when the head is corrupt, the body suffers. The body of politics suffers.
Exactly.
And that's why it's so dangerous.
So everything has to be, in Shakespeare, has to be measured against the society that is ruling.
And think about today, where the church has been corrupted with evangelists and money grubbing. They've corrupted the thing that God had set out for it to be. So it applies today in a very interesting way.
But these are the protestations that men in this time would have made. They'd be willing to die for family honor. And her mistake, such as it is, if there is one in the play, is that she takes at face value the principles of the society in which she lives. And that's what her innocence or naivety, as we might see it, tests. But we could set it in, like in this time, it would be The Godfather, or it would be Islam. You know, there are people do all over the world live by very strong principles, senses of honor.
Doesn't she say somewhere in the play that if she does this thing, she condemns him also? So it's not as if, I think, in her mind, if I do this thing and save him, he is saved. Instead, she says he also loses. In spirit, he is dead. So it's not as simple as
more than our brother. It's our chastity.
Exactly.
Our chastity. My brother and my chastity. And in that world, it's the man who threatens her purity. Therefore, it is the man who saves her purity. That as a woman, she has no action. It has to be her brother.
We have got to look at where the form helps all that. And I wondered if you two would mind sitting in the middle, back to back, leaning on each other, and doing the argument through, because I keep the conversation she's having with herself. And you start, Latanya.
To whom should I complain?
Did I tell this, who would believe me?
Oh, perilous mouths that bear in them one and the self-same tongue, either of condemnation or approve.
Each actor is reading one whole sentence, either to a full stop or question mark, and by doing this, we will hear how Isabella is questioning both herself and her predicament. In other words, how she is thinking it through.
Had he 20 heads to tender down on 20 bloody blocks, he'd yield them up before his sister should her body stoop to such horrid pollution.
Then Isabel live chaste and brother die.
More than our brother is our chastity.
I'll tell him yet of Angelo's request, and fit his mind to death for his soul's rest.
It seems like they have a short thought, or at least the first questions, and then it just rolls into something, and then it stops, and then there's another one, I'll to my brother, and then that rolls even further.
And then it goes a bit wild, doesn't it? At 20.
When she's described the awfulness of the corruption, and these horrible images of hooking things up and dragging them, and it's a very savage image that she paints there, and then she goes immediately to the brother as the source of hope, security, sense, goodness.
That half line, I'll to my brother, is absolutely firm, isn't it? There's no other,
and that's the end
no
of the
other course possible.
Shows you there's no family, obviously. There's no mother, there's no father in the play. It's sort of odd that you don't ever see their parents. They're not there. So they're completely alone. They're left on their own devices.
I really noticed the line where she says, she's sort of putting it all on her brother, saying how wonderful and noble, and then she says, though he hath fallen by prompture of the blood, he's done exactly the same thing.
Yes.
Quite ironic.
And like, yeah, he's sort of, but yeah, still he's honourable and still he can die for my chastity, you know, it's like a complete hypocrisy.
It's not hypocrisy. She's married. She's a married woman to God.
Not yet.
But she's taken the road to be there. Her commitment is still there. You're right. I think the wavering is right because it's human flesh talking. There's a premise here that we're so hip.
Yeah.
We don't think about it anymore. But it's still, there's a principle that still exists, whether we like it or we don't.
Yeah, but when she speaks, although she's insisting on the principle, the way she speaks kind of gives a lie to it because it's more complicated than she will admit to herself somehow.
This part becomes doctrine. Part of it is doctrine versus part of what she actually feels. That's all I'm saying.
True.
Flesh and keep that in mind and just run over there and do it.
Over here.
Move any way you like for each new thought.
To whom should I complain? Did I tell this, who would believe me? Oh, perilous mouths that bear in them one and the self-same tongue, either of condemnation or of proof, bidding the law make curtsy to their will, hooking both right and wrong to the appetite to follow as it draws. I'll to my brother. Though he hath fallen by prompture of the blood.
This exercise helps us to pinpoint how each thought opens out a question, and that question leads us to the next thought. Her mind is continually provoking the next thought, and in the end it leads her to this conclusion. More than our brother is our chastity.
Isabel lived chaste, and brother died. More than our brother is our chastity.
Yes. And that argument was so clear, wasn't it? Did you feel that?
Yeah.
You get a real sense from the language of total
Yes.
moral absolutes.
Yes.
Although
Brilliant.
it's very complex in her head,
Yes.
she is dealing with a moral absolute somehow.
Yes.
And she's... I heard this time so clearly was, I mean, unless I'm hearing it wrong, but I liked it the wrong way I was hearing it. Oh, perilous mouths that bear in them. That whole thing this time to me refers to whom should I complain? There's no one that will hold the ambivalence of this, that there is, it's easy for them, they'll just pick a right or wrong and say it's simple, when the truth is I'm caught in this ambivalence. I'm stuck between these two things that are both so powerful.
Yes. Can we have Lindsay now? Can we all stand up and just speak it in the middle again? What I'd like you now to do is actually just start over there in a minute, and I want you to say a phrase. I want you to go up to somebody and say it, part of it, directly to them. Okay? So you go over there. And I want you to be walking around the room so she doesn't quite know where to go. When she comes up to you, turn away. Yes. Right. So they're going to be walking all around the room. Okay. And just really hook onto somebody. Right.
To whom should I complain? Who, did I tell this, who would believe me? Oh, perilous mouths that bear in them one and the self-same tongue, either of condemnation or of proof, bidding the law make curtsy to their will, hooking both right and wrong to the appetite to follow as it draws. Oh, to my brother. Though he hath fallen by prompture of the blood, yet hath he in him such a mind of honor that had he 20 heads to tender down on 20 bloody blocks, he'd yield them up before his sister would her body stoop to such abhorred pollution. Then Isabel lived chaste, and brother die. More than our brother is our chastity. A desperate need to convey to justify a desperate need. To
I-
make someone listen.
The thing I felt is that you're almost immediately on your brother's side, not yours. That actually you're kind of, you feel for him.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's because of our relationship to God now, or our general kind of relationship to God, where she, just sleep with the guy. I mean, it's one night, for God's sake. A couple of minutes, maybe. You know, it's...
A quickie.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I mean, that's the real, seems to be the real kind of
Yes,
difficulty
yes.
of the thing.
That's the problem when you read it. You think, you must be kidding. You're not going to let him die. But then when you speak it, you have no other choice but to commit totally to that. And then what happens between you and who's listening is the interesting bit.
The desperation of your argument is what led me to think, oh, she's wrong. She has to convince herself far too much for this to be right.
Yes.
Whereas, you know, there may be, let's say, and Brutus the same thing with the serpent's egg. You think, is there a clue in the way it's written how it should be played? I mean, would the argument be a better argument if he didn't want the desperation?
Yeah, the desperation is only there to release certain things about the argument, just so we're let into how people's minds tick and what makes them do something. That's the bottom line of it, isn't it? All these soliloquies have been an attempt to explore how the language informs our search for the character, the rhythms, the structures of thought, the imagery, the very choice of words and sounds. They all take us to the very center of the character and to the predicament of that character. In the next tape, tape 3, we will be looking at the differences between speaking prose and verse. How prose has very specific rhythms of its own, often more difficult to pin down. We will also be looking at some passages of dialogue to find the shared energy, shared cadence and music in a text with more than one character, and how actors can use this to give energy and suspense to a scene. And we will end by looking at a piece of modern text, a speech from Edward Bond's Lear. We will take a speech from the play and work on it using exercises which we have already done on the Shakespeare texts, and we will see that these exercises can open up modern text for the actor in very similar ways.
It is a generally received notion that all of Shakespeare's plays are written in verse. In actual fact, only Richard II is entirely in verse. In the others, the writing shifts back and forth between verse and prose. But these shifts are all part of the journey Shakespeare's taking us on. They are clues to discovering character. You may be surprised to discover, as I was when Sis showed me, that prose also has its own very clear rhythm, though it's not always easy to immediately perceive. And then we'll be discovering and examining some dialogue to find out how characters connect through a shared vocabulary and a shared rhythm. We'll also see how the choices we make about what we're doing physically as we speak can open up yet other layers of meaning. And our final exercise in this program looks at a piece of modern text, a speech from Edward Bond's Lear, and shows how the techniques we've learned for speaking Shakespeare's language can be useful in opening up even present-day texts.
Let's look at some prose, or rather hear some prose, and discover something about its rhythm. It is not a formal rhythm like the iambic beat in the verse which we have been looking at. It is much more elusive than that, but it has a rhythm and a shape nevertheless, a rhythm and a shape which often defines the meaning. Shakespeare uses long and short phrases and juxtaposes them in a way that somehow evokes a response from us as we listen. His skill at building a speech with phrases of varying lengths can produce an effect, and that effect can be comic or ironic or sad.
Would I were with him wheresoever he is, either in heaven or in hell.
Nay, sure he's not in hell. He's in Arthur's bosom. If ever man went to Arthur's bosom and made a finer end, and went away and had been any Crispin child, aparted even just between 12 and 1, even at the turning of the tide. For after I saw him fumble with the sheets and play with flowers and smile upon his finger's end, I knew there was but one way. For his nose was as sharp as a pen, and a babble of green fields. How now, Sir John, quoth I. What, man, be of good cheer. And so I cried out, God, 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 3 or 4 times. Yeah, I to comfort him, bid him I should not think of God. I hope there was no need to trouble himself with such thoughts yet. So I bade me lay more clothes on his feet, and I put my hand into the bed, and I felt them, and they were as cold as stone. And then I felt to his knees, so upward and upward, and all was as cold as any stone. Well, the rhythm is so powerful, and I just kept cutting it.
Don't worry, because that's
yeah,
exactly
because the emotion gets carried away. And
yeah. What did you hear from that?
It was terrible.
What?
Is that prose?
It's prose.
Prose.
Yes. Does it have a rhythm?
It does.
Yes.
And this is really important because it affects modern writing as well. Those moments, it comes like a psalm almost, you know, like the pointing in a psalm. It also works with comedy as well. I did a workshop once on King Lear, and in the workshop happened to be one of the actress's father, who is a stand-up comic in Scotland. And he was just amazed that the rhythm of the fool in Lear was exactly the rhythm that he used to get a laugh, to get his payoff lines, and it's still the same. Do you know, I mean, he knew very little about Shakespeare. He just was, but he was blown out by that. If you sat there And if you could, while you were reading it, which is going to be very difficult, I want you to draw what you see on that wall.
And should I keep in mind they're propelling it forward rather than?
Don't worry about anything. Just
up with the acting.
yes. Just say the words as you draw, as much as you can.
Say. No. Nay, sure he's not in hell. He's in Arthur's bosom, if ever man went to Arthur's bosom. I made a finer end and went away.
Drawing something is always a good exercise. You might construct the first house you lived in, or a building you love, something which draws out a personal response.
Lay with the flowers and smile upon his finger's end. I knew there was but one way. For his nose was as sharp as a pen and babbled of green fields.
I asked Blythe to draw what she could see, partly to take her mind off the pressure of making sense of the text, but also to focus her on something visual outside herself. This made her more precise and more objective.
Bid him I should not think of God. I hope there was no need to trouble himself with any such thoughts yet. So I bade me lay more clothes on his feet. I put my hand into the bed and felt it. Them they were as cold as any stone. And then I felt to his knees. And so upward and upward, and all was as cold as any stone.
Really?
Yeah. But you have to keep going forward, right? I mean, it has to keep.
I mean, it's
still
hell
too many
doing
stops.
that exercise when you're reading as well. It was brilliant because doing that took the responsibility of the emotion, and suddenly one heard how she was thinking. Instead of how she was feeling,
Yes,
how she
that's
was
the
moving
thing.
forward.
It's so hard to get away from.
I know.
Because that's what's so difficult about this for me. And Kathy was saying before, no, don't. I said I can't unless I know the subtext or the emotional life of the character. I can't just see the words, but you have to.
But it's a two-way thing. It's that thing of doing one thing and then the other, and one feeding the other.
I still did too many stops.
Doesn't matter. It takes time to do this. It takes time to just let the emotion go. Let the emotion take care of itself. And when you're thinking of something in retrospect, the important thing is to be exact, isn't it? Is to be precise. She's very precise.
Yeah, you see, then my mind went back to, I better get back onto the word. And leave. It's so difficult. And leave the emotion now, and it comes in anyway.
Don't get worried about it. You've got to be doing both
say that
at once.
Again, what you just said before.
Well, sometimes it's good just to release the emotion and just get back to being absolutely precise and exact about. She's thinking back. What happened? I went there. I did this. And I felt up there. Now just do it again. Because it's so lovely. And don't be put off by that. Don't try for anything. Just do it.
Nay, sure, he's not in hell. He's in Arthur's bosom, if ever man went to Arthur's bosom. I made a finer end and went away, and it had been any christom child. I parted even just between 12 and 1, even at the turning of the tide. For after I saw...
That's great. Just take a little bit more space between each thought. Okay. It'll be helpful.
Nay, sure, he's not in hell. He's in Arthur's bosom, if ever man went to Arthur's bosom. I made a finer end, and went away, and it had been any christom child. I parted even just between 12 and 1. Even at the turning of the tide. Or after I saw him fumble with the sheets, and play with flowers, and smile upon his finger's end, I knew there was but one way. For his nose was as sharp as a pen, and a babbled of green fields. How now, Sir John, quoth I. What man, be of good cheer. So I cried out, God, 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 3 or 4 times. Now I, to comfort him, bid him I should not think of God. I hoped there was no need to trouble himself with any such thoughts yet. So I bade me lay more clothes on his feet. I put my hand into the bed and felt them, and they were as cold as any stone. Then I felt to his knees, and so upward and upward, and all was as cold as any stone.
Oh, brilliant, yes.
No,
Can you feel it's beginning to come together?
Yeah,
Your feelings from the beginning and that thing, you know.
Yeah,
that's great.
Pick up and go on its own now.
Yes, it's really lovely, and it's not to say don't have emotion, but it's just the emotion just has to has got to come from you can't suppress it any longer. Do you see? Rather than start out being emotional. Does that make sense? Yes.
It makes it more devastating that it isn't emotional. If it's when you did it that time, it was quite so straight. And in a way, it's much more moving because what she's saying is so personal. What happened to her? That's enough in a way. The simpler it is in that way, the more upsetting it is because people do that, don't they? If something terrible's happened to them, there's a kind of weird calm they have about them. The way they describe in detail what happened.
Exactly, yeah. I mean,
but also it's like a well-told story, or if you're telling a joke, you don't want to be kind of going, you're going to really like this is a really funny joke, it's really funny. So when you read it actually the last 2 times, I felt like I was you, or that I was standing next to you as you were taking me through this journey, and therefore your pain at the end was a surprise.
When people die, and somebody says, "Were you there?" And then you start saying, "Yeah," and he was, and how was he? And somebody tells the story of how this person died. It's generally never, "Oh, he was just."
It's afterwards.
It's afterwards.
Yeah.
And you're drawn into the woman because of the incidental stuff she tells you.
You have to define that, don't you, to keep yourself
those
sane,
are things
really.
that people can share.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone can think, oh, he looked like that, and he said that, and it's a way in for everybody.
Smiled at his fingers end.
I think it's what I was thinking too strongly of character when I was beginning, thinking this woman's different than me, and I have to...
Don't say that.
I love the idea of his nose being as sharp as a pen.
Yes.
It's so vivid, and
I didn't understand what that was in the beginning, but you used to tell me it was because it was so cold.
Yes.
Is that
like
right?
the crazy things that people remember about
Yeah.
people, but people who've died, you explain them in a funny way that make you laugh almost.
I remember when the Piper Alpha oil rig blew up in Scotland, and they were talking to the guys who had survived. And one guy, when he was describing how he survived, the way he described it was, he said, "I did a beautiful swan dive off of the shelf." And I thought, that's incredible that you're running and there's the whole panic and you're running to save your life. And what you most remember is that it was a beautiful swan dive. So you imagine this guy kind of going, there's flames blowing up, people are dying, his friends are melting in front of him. And he runs to the edge, and what he remembers is how beautiful his dive was. And it was just incredible.
That says everything, doesn't it, about where somebody is at. It's where our images are at.
What helped about the exercise for me is, I know if I'm describing a death, which I did yesterday with Tony Goldwyn, we were both in the room when somebody died, it's such a precious, bigger than human experience. It's almost like you wouldn't dare say, and then this happened. You feel like I have to be a perfect channel for this and not interpret, because it's so much bigger than I even get, that I'm going to tell you what the room looked like, what it felt like, and I wouldn't dare get in the middle of it, and that's, I think, why the simpler it was, the more it was unbearable.
The way she tells a story, you kind of get the fact that she actually misses the moment when he dies. She's getting the blankets. She said, he did this, and then I did this, and then... But you kind of work out that she actually was probably
moment.
Picking up the blankets.
It's a wonderful, awful thing that he bade her put blankets on him, but then when she felt him, that was the moment when he went.
And that she's following death up his body.
Yeah. We all miss that moment, don't we? What is that moment when that breath stops? Very good. Thank you. Now to another piece of prose with a quite different sound, nothing poetic or extravagant in the language, but in its understated precision, it speaks volumes. I want to continue now with this thing about prose. I just want you to listen to something. Come a little bit forward, and Paul is going to be Brutus, and Trellis is going to be Cassius. Actually, don't read it at the moment. Just listen and see what you hear. Hear what you see.
But soft, I pray you. What, did Caesar swoon?
He fell down in the marketplace and foamed at the mouth and was speechless.
It is very like. He hath the falling sickness.
No, Caesar hath it not. But you and I, and honest Casca, we have the falling sickness.
I know not what you mean by that, but I'm sure Caesar fell down. If the tag rope people did not clap him and kiss him according as he pleased and displeased them, as they used to do the players in the theatre, I am no true man.
But what said he when he came unto himself?
Marry, before he fell down, when he perceived the common herd was glad he refused the crown, he plucked me up his doublet and offered them his throat to cut. And I had been a man of any occupation, if I would not have taken him at a word, I might go to hell among these rogues. And so he fell. When he came to himself again, he said if he had done or said anything amiss, he desired their worships to think it was his infirmity. 3 or 4 wenches where I stood cried, "Alas, good soul," and forgave him with all their hearts. But there's no heed to be taken of them. If Caesar had stabbed their mothers, they would have done no less.
And after that, he came thus sad away.
Aye.
Did Cicero say anything?
Aye. He spoke Greek.
To what effect?
Nay, and I'll tell you that. I'll ne'er look you at the face again. But those that understood him smiled at one another and shook their heads. But for my own part, it was Greek to me. But I could tell you more news too. Marillus and Flavius, for pulling scarfs of Caesar's images, are put to silence. Fare you well. There was more foolery yet, if I could remember it.
Will you sup with me tonight, Casca?
No, I am promised forth.
Will you dine with me tomorrow?
Aye, if I be alive, and your mind hold, and your dinner worth eating.
I will expect you.
Do so. Farewell, both.
Oh, it's so loaded.
You know, like,
treading on a tightrope.
and it's like they're feeling each other out very subtly, kind of maneuvering round. It's sort of like as if they're circling one another. You know, it's like.
And it's the care of those words, isn't it? They become quite ominous in a way, don't they? But the humor is wonderful too, because it is the only way you survive.
Did Caesar swoon?
They are down in the marketplace and foamed at the mouth and was speechless.
It's very like. He hath the falling sickness.
Working around a table like this and changing chairs as the thoughts change is really good, for it tells us so much about how we are relating to the other character or characters, whether we are being direct with them or evasive, what our purpose is, how close we feel to them at any given point. It somehow reveals the internal politics of the scene.
Clap him and hiss him according as he pleased and displeased them, as they used to do the players in the theatre. I am no true man.
But what said he when he came unto himself?
Mary, before he fell down,
when he perceived the common head was glad he refused the crown, he plucked me up his doublet and offered them his throat to cut. And I had been a man of any occupation, if I had not have taken him at a word, I might go to hell among the rogues. And so he fell. And when he came to himself again, he said, if he had done or said anything amiss, he desired their worship to think it was his infirmity. 3 or 4 wenches, where I stood, cried, alas, good soul, and forgave him with all their hearts. But there's no heed to be taken of them. If Caesar had stabbed their mothers, they would have done no less.
After that, he came thus sad away.
Aye.
Did Cicero say anything?
Aye, he spoke Greek.
To what effect?
Nay, and I'll tell you that. I ne'er look you in the face again. But those that understood him smiled at one another and shook their heads. But for mine own part, it was Greek to me. I could tell you more news too. Marellus and Flavius, for pulling scarfs of Caesar images, are put to silence. Fare you well. There was more foolery, yet I could remember it.
Will you sup with me tonight, Casca?
No, I'm promised forth.
Will you dine with me tomorrow?
Aye, if I be alive. And your mind hold. And your dinner worth eating.
Good. I will expect you.
Do so. Very well, both.
Great. What about that?
It's this kind of suspension in the language all the time. It's kind of it's like you're sitting on the fence.
And yet throwing it away at the same time, isn't it?
And it was almost the sense that you had 3 people with very clear agendas.
Yes.
And the centre of it was George, who had to take on board who was asking it. It wasn't just the question, it was who was asking him the question, what is that person's agenda? Okay, now I can answer it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't only that they were being heard within their conversation,
No.
it was also his answers to the other people in the...
And so it's always those spaces, isn't it, that tell the story. It's quite useful to do it round the table, you see, because you sort of find where you need to be in relation to the other person.
Seems quite modern in a way.
It's very modern,
Because
yes.
this,
Is that the right
But
word?
I got from watching this at the table, Casca kind of needs them too. That for the first time I saw you pursuing them.
Yeah,
every
it was
now and
great,
then.
yes.
When in fact
yeah.
I always just thought of the scene as those two
Yeah.
going after him. When in fact they have moments where they kind of put their hands in the air and he says, oh, but wait, I do want to actually talk about this.
The emotional undercurrent comes through the phrasing of it, through the different lengths of sentences, of phrases, and the short ones, and the spaces between them. And if you invest it with too much feeling, we don't hear that. And actually the emotional undercurrent is in those spaces, isn't it? Is in the rhythm of it. Prose is much more difficult in a way to grasp, isn't it? Then, I mean, it's easy to see what is a line of poetry. It's not so apparent in prose. The next scene also shows 3 characters in a dangerous situation. They are followers of Richard II, and now the king has fled to Ireland. They are in danger from Bolingbroke. The underlying danger is similar to the Casca scene, and this again is manifested in the shared rhythms, but this time it is in verse. Listen to how they develop their argument, how they build their ladders of thought. We hear the tension as their rhythms quicken and the pitch gets slightly higher. It's after Gaunt has died in Richard II, and Richard II has taken over all Gaunt's property. These are 3 defectors, basically.
The wind sits fair for news to go to Ireland, but none returns. For us to levy power proportionable to the enemy is all impossible.
Besides, our nearness to the king in love is near the hate of those love not the king.
And that is the wavering commons. For their love lies in their purses, and whoso empties them by so much fills their hearts with deadly hate.
Wherein the king stands generally condemned.
If judgment lie in them, then so do we, because we ever have been near the king.
Well, I will to refuge, straight to Bristol Castle. The Earl of Wiltshire is already there.
Thither will I with you. For little office will the hateful commoners perform for us, except like curs to tear us all to pieces. Will you go along with us?
No. I will to Ireland, to his majesty. Farewell. If heart's presages be not vain, we three here part, that ne'er shall meet again.
That as York thrives to beat back Bolingbroke.
Alas, poor Duke, the task he undertakes is numbering sands and drinking oceans dry. Where one on his side fights, thousands will fly.
Farewell at once for all and ever.
Well, we may meet again.
I fear me never.
It's like a chorus almost, isn't it? There's quite a music to it. Instead of being like the Brutus speech that we did and found the ladders of reasoning through that, just try and hear how they progress with their reasoning. Let's all read it once together. Right. The wind, go. The wind sits there
for news to go for Ireland,
but none returns.
For us to levy power proportionable to the enemy
is all impossible. Besides, our
nearness to the king in love
is near the hate of those who love not the king. And that is the wavering commons, for their love lies in their purses, and whoso empties them by so much fills their hearts with deadly hate, wherein the king stands generally condemned. If judgment lie in them,
then so do we, because we never have been near the king.
Well,
I will for refuge straight to Bristol Castle. The Earl of Wiltshire is already there. Thither will I with you, for little office will the hateful commoners perform for us, except like curs to tear us all to pieces. Will you go along with us? No. I will to Ireland, to his majesty. Farewell. If heart's presages be not vain, we three here part, that ne'er shall meet again. That's as York thrives to beat back Bolingbroke. Alas, poor Duke, the task he undertakes is numbering sands and drinking oceans dry. Where one on his side fights, thousands will fly. Farewell at once for all and ever. Well, we may meet again. I fear me never.
It's like a kind of chamber piece. It's like
Yes.
like a string quartet.
It is, isn't it? Yes. It's one voice, really, isn't it? And you've got to go with its rhythm.
It's
Do you
a
feel
totally
that?
different energy than the Casca
Yeah.
scene from Caesar. It's total. It seems like much more the time is of the element, and
Yeah.
some decisions have to be made right now at this table.
Yes.
They all know that they're all on the same side. They've
Yes.
all they've come together,
Yes.
and although you expect them maybe all to go off together, one fractures. I mean,
Yes.
it's a split, and maybe it's the first sign of the King's party disintegrating.
In this one, it seems that, especially the way the lines are set, that they all share the same rhythm.
And that gives that unity you're talking about, like as a chamber piece.
Yes.
They're all working to the same end.
Yes. Toby and Eleni, can you walk at random up and down that side and you that side?
Right.
When they are between those two markers there and these two markers here, you have to stop speaking. So you're in three.
The wind sits fair for news to go for Ireland, but none returns. For us to levy power proportionable to the enemy is all impossible.
Besides, our nearness to the king. Besides, our
Our nearness to the king in love is near the hate of those that love not the king.
That is the wavering commons, for their love lies in their purses, and whoso empties them by so much fills their hearts with deadly hate.
Wherein the king stands generally condemned.
If judgment lie in them, then so do we, because we ever have been near the king.
Well, I will for refuge straight to Bristol Castle. The Earl of Wiltshire is already there. Thither will I with you. Little office can the hateful commoners perform for us, except like curs to tear us all to pieces. Will you go along with us?
No. I will to Ireland to his majesty. I will to Ireland to his majesty. Farewell. If heart's presages be not vain, we three here part that ne'er shall meet again.
That's as York thrives to beat back Bolingbroke.
Alas, poor Duke, the task he undertakes is numbering sands and drinking oceans dry. Where one on his side fights, thousands will fly.
Farewell at once. For once, for all and ever.
Well, we may meet again.
I fear me never.
Yeah. That was why, yes. That was terrific. The words themselves are precious, they're dangerous.
That's
And
right.
they're not easy to say. And they're very guarded and very, inquiring about each other because they don't quite know. You never know in that kind of society, who is going to be with you. And that this is the area that we quite find difficult to enter at the moment because we live in a fairly free society, but it is actually that thing of life and death there all the time.
A while ago you said something about that there's no full stop till the end of the play.
Yeah.
And how it's, in fact, it's not necessarily about stopping speaking or words. It's just that the energy that there were so many huge pauses in that scene, and yet the vitality of it never dropped.
Yes.
And
the
I think
suspense was going all the time.
And I think you're right. For the entire whatever play it is, that's got to stay in the air.
Because whatever you say, even if in the middle of your own soliloquy, you're provoking the next thought.
Right.
You're waiting for that next moment, and that everything you say is slightly altering things. You can't take it back.
When they said, "Will you come with us?" and he said no, and then there was a really long break before he said why, and that was so kind of full of, were they enemies? Were they, it was really, it was so full.
And it takes the responsibility away from the actors to decide what is secret and what isn't secret, what is important and what isn't important. The thing that seemed to really inform that scene is that actually every single thing they said was dangerous. And also you saw a camaraderie between them because they were protecting each other's words. So that, even if somebody was speaking and they didn't see the person go past, the other person would go... And
looking after each other.
Yeah.
And they were so dependent on these two men over here that they couldn't decide what moment in the piece they were going to hit because it was all up in the air.
You can't decide. And, as actors, you have to decide at some point. But it's still, you've got to leave things open as well, haven't you?
Yeah, you decide after you've explored. So often you decide before you've gotten a chance to explore what the possibilities are. You have to make decisions about, the whole part before you even...
It's so good when there's an element in it which you can't predict.
Yeah.
Because it's in verse, things can get kind of predictable.
Exactly, yes.
There's an element you think you're not sure what's going to happen next, and everything stays
And somehow we've got to always keep that anarchy open, haven't we? That subversiveness open. I mean, because all the language is subversive in a way, isn't it? It sort of erupts all the time. Now to another scene where there is also a shared rhythm, but for a totally different reason. The two characters are deeply in love. They share their feeling as they share their verse, their language. What we're hearing is how, in a way, the phrasing and the length of phrasing and the rhythm of it leads us into a character and the character of the scene as well as your individual characters. So now let's listen to Hermia and Lysander. And just listen, it's very poetic, obviously, heightened poetry.
How now, my love, why is your cheek so pale? How chance the roses there do fade so fast?
Belike for want of rain, which I could well beteem them from the tempest of my eyes.
Ay me. For aught that I could ever read, could ever hear, by tale or history, the course of true love never did run smooth. But either it was different in blood,
Oh, cross, too high to be enthralled to low.
or else misgraft in respect of years,
Spite, too old to be engaged to young.
or else it stood upon the choice of friends.
Oh, hell, to choose love by another's eyes.
Or if there were a sympathy in choice, war, death, sickness did lay siege to it, making it momentary as a sound, swift as a shadow, short as any dream, brief as the lightning and the collied night that in a spleen unfolds both heaven and earth, and ere a man hath power to say, behold, the jaws of darkness do devour it up. So quick, bright things come to confusion.
If then true lovers have been ever crossed, it stands as an edict in destiny. Then let us teach our trial patience, because it is a customary cross, as due to love as thoughts and dreams and sighs, wishes and tears, poor fancy's followers.
A good persuasion. Therefore hear me, Hermia. If thou lovest me, then steal forth thy father's house tomorrow night, and in the wood, a league without the town, where I did meet thee once with Helena to do observance to a morn of May. There will I stay for thee.
My good Lysander, I swear to thee by Cupid's strongest bow, by his best arrow with the golden head, by the simplicity of Venus' doves, by that which knitteth souls and prospers loves, and by that fire which burned the Carthage queen when the false Troyan under sail was seen, by all the vows that ever men have broke, in number more than ever women spoke. In that same place thou hast appointed me, tomorrow truly will I meet with thee.
Keep promise, love. Look, here comes Helena. Do I totally contradict what is she saying? Yes, I see. We should be patient. And I say, yeah, good idea. Let's get the hell out of here.
Yes,
Is that what happens?
yes. But that's
Is he
what
just
happens
not
when
listening
you,
to her, or does he?
Well, that's what happens in love, isn't it? I mean, yes.
Oh, great, a good persuasion. Okay. I mean, it's just, he doesn't even, I guess what threw me is the I me then.
I would like you to say the last 2 or 3 words of the line that has already been said to you.
Okay.
So you might say fade so fast, and then belike for want of rain, and then you might say tempest of my eyes. Okay. So we hear how the argument goes.
Okay. How now, my love? Why is your cheek so pale? How chance the roses there do fade so fast?
Fade so fast. Belike for want of rain, which I could well beteem them from the tempest of my eyes.
Tempest of my eyes. Ay me. For aught that I could ever read, could ever hear, by tale or history, the course of true love never did run smooth. But either it was different in blood.
Different in blood.
This exercise can be done with any piece of dialogue to find its essential rhythm and movement. When I talk about the music, what I really mean is that they take on each other's rhythm and respond to the other person's note and lift it as the thought develops and becomes emotionally heightened and as they become closer.
Another's eyes. Or if there were a sympathy
in choice. War, death, or sickness did lay siege to it, making it momentary as a sound, swift as a shadow, short as any dream, brief as the lightning and the collied night that in a spleen unfolds both heaven and earth, and ere a man hath power to say, behold the jaws of darkness to devour it up. So quick, bright things come to confusion.
Bright things come to confusion. If then true lovers have been ever crossed, it stands as an edict in destiny. Then let us teach our trial patience, because it is a customary cross, as due to love as thoughts and dreams and sighs, wishes and tears, poor fancy's followers.
Fancy's followers. A good persuasion. Therefore, hear me, Hermia. I have a widow aunt, a dowager, of great revenue, and she hath no child. From Athens is her house remote 7 leagues, and she respects me as her only son. There, gentle Hermia, may I marry thee, and to that place the sharp Athenian law cannot pursue us. If thou lovest me, then steal forth thy father's house tomorrow night, and in the wood, a league without the town, where I did meet thee once with Helena to do observance to a morn in May. There will I stay for thee.
There will I stay for thee. My good Lysander, I swear to thee by Cupid's strongest bow, by his best arrow with the golden head, by the simplicity of Venus' doves, by that which kniteth souls and prospers loves, and by that fire which burned the Carthage queen when the false Troyan under sail was seen, by all the vows that ever men have broke, and number more than ever woman spoke. In that same place thou hast appointed me. Tomorrow truly will I meet with thee.
Meet with thee. Keep promise, love. Look, here comes Helena.
What about that?
Wonderful.
Thought,
little
yeah.
diving board. Like where
Yes.
exactly am I going from? Of course, it's like the most moronic part of being an actor for me. But forgetting that I'm listening to the other person.
Right.
Like, it's the oldest problem in
Yeah.
the book of like, what's my next line, as opposed to, what is she saying to me?
Right.
But it's also being able to hear that and really reply to that.
And
It was amazing.
It was interesting to realize how my first line was so directly related to his last one, whether I was agreeing with it or not.
Yes.
But it motivated me
Yeah.
to really.
And it gives it a different energy all the time, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I also love how she just goes off on like Cupid and Venus and Troy and Carthage, and I'm thinking, I don't give a shit about any of that. I mean, I'm like so factual. I'm like, look, I have a wife, I have this aunt, she has money, she has no kids. We can go to this house, and she starts going off on Venus and the Carthage queens. I have a widow aunt, a dowager of great revenue, and she hath no child. From Athens is her house remote 7 leagues, and she respects me as her only son. There, gentle Hermia, may I marry thee, and to that place the sharp Athenian law cannot pursue us. If thou lovest me, then steal forth thy father's house tomorrow night, and in the wood, league without the town, where I did meet thee once with Helena to do observance to a morn in May. There will I stay for thee.
My good Lysander, I swear to thee by Cupid's strongest bow, by his best arrow with the golden head, by the simplicity of Venus' doves, by that which knitteth souls and prospers love, and by that fire which burned the Carthage queen when the false Troyan under sail was seen, by all the vows that ever men have broke, and number more than ever woman spoke. In that same place thou hast appointed me. Tomorrow truly will I meet with thee.
Keep promise, love. Look, here comes Helena.
Godspeed, fair Helena. Whither away?
Call you me fair? That fair again on say. Demetrius loves your fair. Oh, happy fair. Your eyes are lodestars, and your tongue's sweet air more tunable than lark to shepherd's ear. When wheat is green, when hawthorn buds appear. Sickness is catching. Oh, a favour so. Yours would I catch, fair Helena, Hermia, ere I go. My ear should catch your ear. My voice, my eye, your eye. My tongue should catch your tongue's sweet melody. Were the world mine, Demetrius being baited. The rest I'd give to you to be translated. Teach me how you look, and with what art you sway the motion of Demetrius's heart.
I frown upon him, yet he loves me still.
But your frowns would teach my smiles much skill.
I give him curses, yet he gives me love.
Oh, that my prayers could your affection move.
The more I hate, the more he follows me.
The more I love, the more he hateth
His
me.
folly, Helena, is no fault of mine.
None but your beauty. Would that fault were mine.
Take comfort, he no more shall see my face. Lysander and myself will fly this place. Before the time I did Lysander see, seemed Athens as a paradise to me. Oh, then what graces in my love do dwell, that he hath turned a heaven unto a hell.
The music is beginning to come. I know we would have to work on it.
It does feel like as soon as she comes, it's there like boom.
Yeah.
And
And it happens in the sound of it, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
They started out, you had such different rhythms. It was like you were playing this note, she was playing this note, and then by the time he started to talk about the aunt, you set another pace and she caught right into it, and it was like then it was the same note. It was like both of them went together.
It's interesting because in the play, it's just when, you know, Hermia's getting interested in guys and Helena's getting interested in guys and he's getting interested in girls. So there's this conflict between the two of them.
Yeah.
She's really close to him, but also really close to her. And their friendship is under jeopardy because of guys, suddenly, you know.
It's such a timeless thing that, you know, you're in love, your girlfriend comes.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it's so modern and so familiar.
It is,
And suddenly the
isn't it?
guy's going.
You can hear how the music of the scene lifts through, can't you? That it's not, you know, one speech and then another speech and answering it and come to. It's actually always going on, and it's lifting it through in a way, lifting the sense through, so it keeps the suspense and that keeps the music going, and that's what interests us. And this is what is difficult now, because we don't hear that so much in our heads, do we? It isn't quite so much there.
I know for me, when I have a definite thing I'm trying to make clear, speeches can go on for pages and I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But in general, you're right. The words, they use so many words that until you've really gotten specific with them,
absolutely.
I tend to not know what to do with my hands.
Now, can we just go to Helena's speech? Instead of doing a dialogue like we did in the same way as with some of the others, can you just do one line each, but keep it going, you know, keep the whole thing going, answering, as it were, your thoughts.
How happy some or other some can be.
Through Athens, I am thought as fair as she.
But what of that? Demetrius thinks not so.
He will not know what all but he do know.
And as he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes.
So I, admiring of his qualities.
This is one soliloquy, but I want two people to read it to bring out the debate going on in Helena's head. She has to work through her dilemma and come to some decision as to what to do. This is important in any soliloquy. How do we think, and when do we make up our minds?
Wings and no eyes figure unheedy haste.
And therefore is love said to be a child.
Because in choice he is so oft beguiled.
As waggish boys themselves in game forswear.
So the boy love is perjured everywhere.
For ere Demetrius looked on Hermia's eye,
He hailed down oaths that he was only mine.
And when this hail some heat from Hermia felt,
So he dissolved, and showers of oaths did melt.
I will go tell him of fair Hermia's flight.
And to the wood will he tomorrow night
pursue her. And for this intelligence,
if I have thanks, it is a dear expense.
But herein mean I to enrich my pain.
To have his sight thither and back again.
It's quite interesting.
She's so lonely that now she's not
Become such good friends to each other.
I don't think she gets bitter. I didn't feel bitterness. I felt an over-romanticizing. You know, she's been hurt, but then you can't help but still like the person.
It's like as long as she can keep following him, she's
Yes,
alive.
yes.
As long as she can scale some mountain and keep pursuing him, she's breathing.
There is something so full of life about her that she's, you know, I mean, intoxicated, really.
The end of each thought does really lead to the next thought. I mean, unheedy haste, the next thought is about a child, a hasty child. Beguiled, the next thought is about the child, and then game leads to perjured, and perjured leads to he promised me, and promised me leads to the oaths melt, and each one does really, yeah.
Would you like each to do it once yourselves? Yes. Right. Okay.
You go.
Move round the circle behind us.
How happy some or other some can be.
Kathy is moving round with her thoughts so that she can discover where they are taking her. Where is her mind going? This will take the last exercise we did a stage further.
He will not know what all but he do know. And as he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes, so I, admiring of his qualities, things base and vile, holding no quantity, love can transpose to form and dignity. Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind. And therefore is winged Cupid painted blind. Nor hath love's mind of any judgment, taste. Wings and no eyes, figure unheedy haste. And therefore is love said to be a child, because in choice he is so oft beguiled, as waggish boys themselves in game forswear. So the boy love is perjured everywhere. For ere Demetrius looked on Hermia's eyne, he hailed down oaths that he was only mine. And when this heat, when this hail some heat from Hermia felt, so he dissolved, and showers of oaths did melt. I will go tell him of fair Hermia's flight. Then to the wood will he tomorrow night pursue her. And for this intelligence, if I have thanks, it is a dear expense. But herein mean I to enrich my pain, to have his sight thither and back again.
Yeah, great. The argument is really coming. Now, what I'd like with you is that you differentiate between what is happening now and what the almost metaphysical idea of things about qualities and quantities, when you get philosophical about it. So move between those two. You can also do it behind. It's rather nice doing that behind. But just know when you're going from how happy, which is the present, as it were, and through Athens, right, all those things.
Till she's philosophical.
And then when she starts to philosophize, come into the center.
Okay.
That'd be rather nice. This is your kind of inner life in here.
How happy some or other some can be. Through Athens I am thought as fair as she. But what of that? Demetrius thinks not so. He will not know what all but he do know. And as he errs, doting on Hermia's eyes, so I, admiring of his qualities. Things base and vile, holding no quantity, love can transpose to form and dignity. Love looks not with the eyes, but with the mind, and therefore is winged Cupid painted blind. Nor hath love's mind of any judgment taste, wings and no eyes figure unheedy haste. And therefore is love said to be a child, Because in choice he is so oft beguiled. As waggish boys in game themselves forswear, so the boy love is perjured everywhere. For ere Demetrius looked on Hermia's eyne, he hailed down oaths that he was only mine. And when this hail some heat from Hermia felt, so he dissolved, and showers of oaths did melt. I will go tell him of fair Hermia's flight. Then to the wood will he tomorrow night pursue her. And for this intelligence, if I have thanks, it is a dear expense. But herein mean I to enrich my pain, to have his sight thither and back again.
Yes. So all those things are happening in there, aren't they? All those things about time which you have, which Lysander had, you know, the brief lightning in the cold night and everything. It's also making us think about ourselves in relation to, you know, the universe.
It helps you own it, because I know working on it, you think, oh, here comes the part where I'm an expert on something suddenly. But if you go, all right, actually now I'm an expert on this one horrible part of love.
Yes.
You own it, sort of.
Yes.
It makes it a little better. Do you know what I mean?
So it's also, it's about imagination and what we do and how we, you know, and everybody's imagination is just amazing, isn't it? We can't ever enter into anybody else's.
I didn't feel that. I felt I was at the mercy of it. That love, this big thing that I was in, was, you know, I was at the mercy of it. The way you played it,
It's so funny.
A lot more.
Because I felt like, okay, I'm an expert on this one horrible thing. That's what makes it.
You are going to get him. Right. Not me.
Every speech in Shakespeare is about the present, about action, but it is constantly being fed by the character's own inner world. Listen now to this speech of Lady Macbeth. She has just heard the news that Duncan, the king, is coming to stay in the castle.
The raven himself is hoarse, that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe-top full of direst cruelty. Make thick my blood. Stop up.
The images she uses tell us exactly where she is, deep inside herself. All the images are of her body. How the words she uses empower her purpose.
Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall, you murdering ministers. Wherever in your sightless substances you wait on nature's mischief. Come, thick night, and pall thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, that my keen knife see not the wound it makes, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark to cry, hold, hold.
What do you get from that?
There's no downtime.
There isn't any downtime, is there? Yes.
It kind of feeds itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was so frightened of doing this speech because I've never played this character, nor have I ever played anything quite like her. And the first time I read it, and I thought, oh, I'll just stay with that, is she's trying to grab the courage, and she knows, I mean, she's so ambitious, and she so wants these things for her and for her husband. But it was astonishing to me because I just read it for the sense of it the first time, just to myself at home, and I thought, man, she doesn't have all this courage. She doesn't know if she has it all, you know? She's...
Yeah. I used to, where are these images coming from? What
the images?
Yes.
I didn't get the image. I got that you were so clear and that
Really?
you knew where you were going.
Grim
You knew
determination.
you knew who to go and ask, and you knew exactly what to ask for.
Oh, really? Okay, I'll go with that.
All right. Okay.
The other thing is it seems that there's so many one-syllable words
Yeah.
in this. And I don't know why.
Thick my blood.
And
yes.
there's so, the consonants are so
stark, you know, and it's so
We got all
unlike.
that, didn't we? I mean, we really did. We got that actual form and how it really took us without it being like, you know, well spoken, as it were. Do you know what I mean? What I'd like you to do, if you can, while still reading it, I'd like us to get some stuff in the, like boxes and things in the middle. What I want her to do is build like an altar.
The raven himself is horse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts. Unsex me here. Fill me from the crown to the toe-top full of direst cruelty. Make thick my blood. Stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose. Nor keep peace between the effect and it. Come. Now. Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall, you murdering ministers. Wherever in your sightless substances you wait on nature's mischief, come thick night and pour thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, that my keen knife sees not the wound it makes, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark to cry, hold, hold! Couldn't figure out a way to keep his chair up.
Yes, I know.
I thought I'd just hold it.
That was really good that you could. You were sort of taken off guard and didn't know what to do.
It's not gonna work.
Yes.
The tower is so
Yes. Yes. This speech is about ambition, building towards some sort of ideal. And I wanted Kate to build an altar because while she was building it and improvising it, she was also searching for things to build it with. And when you're speaking those words, you are also searching for the words to express the thought. The ambition grows as the structure grows. Now, you can use variations on this exercise for other purposes, other passions. You can build an altar to love, to hate, to despair, to joy. This scene from Macbeth, it's center scene, I think. He has done the deed and is shocked by what he has done. Lady Macbeth has to revive his ambition and resolve. Their complicity and guilt are so apparent in their shared rhythms, their shared lines.
Alack, I am afraid they have awaked and 'tis not done. The attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark! I laid their daggers ready, he could not miss them. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done it. My husband.
I've done the deed. Didst thou not hear a noise?
I heard the owl scream and the crickets cry. Did not you speak?
When?
Now.
As I descended?
Aye.
Hark! Who lies in the second chamber?
Donald Bain.
This is a sorry sight.
A foolish thing to say, a sorry sight.
As one did laugh in sleep, and one cried murder. They did wake each other. I stood and saw them. They did say their prayers and addressed them again to sleep.
There are two lodged together.
One cried, God bless us, and amen the other. As they had seen me with these
hangman's hands. Listening their fear, I could not say amen when they did say, God bless us.
Consider it not so deep.
But wherefore could I not pronounce amen? I had most need of blessing, but amen stuck in my throat.
These deeds must not be thought after these ways, so it will make us mad.
Thought I heard a voice cry, sleep no more. Macbeth does murder sleep. The innocent sleep. Sleep that knits up the ravelled sleeve of care. The death of each day's life. Sore labour's bath. Balm of hurt minds. Great nature's second course. Chief nourisher in life's feast.
What do you mean?
Still it cried, sleep no more to all the house. Glamis hath murdered sleep, and therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more.
Who was it that thus cried? My worthy Thane, you do unbend your noble strength to think so brain-sickly of things. Go get some water and wash this filthy witness from your hand. Why did you bring these daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go carry them and smear the sleepy grooms with blood.
I'll go no more. I'm afraid to think on what I've done. Look on't again, I dare not.
Of purpose. Give me the daggers. The sleeping and the dead but are as pictures. 'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil. If he do bleed, I'll gild the faces of the grooms with all, for it must seem their guilt.
My initial instinct on reading this was, he says, you know, there's one did laugh in sleep and the other cried murder. I sort of like to go, Christ, this happened, and, you know, but actually, he's so detailed in what he says. It's like he's in a kind of shock.
Yes, it's absolutely on the line, isn't it? What we've got to do, where we're going. He is in shock, and she just has to keep him together. That we heard very well. Now get at a distance, so that maybe, is it all right if Toby goes up there and you're just behind here, so that it's over a distance for the moment.
Alack, I am afraid they have awaked, and 'tis not done. The attempt and not the deed confounds us. Hark! I laid their daggers ready. He could not miss him. Had he not resembled my father as he slept, I had done.
My husband! I've done the deed. Didst thou not hear the noise?
I heard the owl scream and the crickets cry. Did not you speak?
When?
Now.
As I descended?
Aye.
Hark! Who lies in the second chamber?
Donalbain.
This is a sorry sight.
A foolish thing to say, a sorry sight.
As one did laugh in sleep. The other cried murder. They did wake each other. I stood and saw them. They did say their prayers and address them again to sleep.
There are two lodged together.
One cried, God bless us, and amen the other. As they had seen me with these hangman's hands. Listening their fear, I could not say amen when they did say God bless us.
Consider it not so deep.
But wherefore could I not pronounce amen? I had most need of blessing, but amen stuck in my throat.
These deeds must not be thought after these ways, so it will make us mad.
I thought I heard a voice cry, sleep no more. Macbeth has murdered sleep. Innocent sleep. Sleep that knits up the ravelled sleeve of care. Death of each day's life. Sore labour's bath. Balm of hurt minds. Great nature's second course. Chief nourisher in life's feast.
What do you mean?
Still it cried, sleep no more. Glamis hath murdered sleep. Therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more.
Macbeth shall sleep no more.
Who was it that thus cried?
I want them to feel the need to get together. They are desperately drawn. Shared rhythm, shared imagery, speaking as one voice.
Wash this filthy witness from your hand. Why did you bring the daggers from the place? They must lie there. Go carry them and smear the sleepy grooms with blood.
I'll go no more. I'm afraid to think of what I've done. Look on again, I dare not.
In form of purpose. Give me the daggers. The sleeping and the dead are but as pictures. 'Tis the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil. If he do bleed, I'll gild the faces of the grooms withal, for it must seem his guilt.
Now I want us to look at ways of informing dialogue, of experimenting with it, of opening it up. In this scene in King Lear, Lear has come to Gloucester's castle to find his loyal Kent in the stocks. Lear has his 100 knights with him. His daughters Goneril and Regan are also there. He begs each of them in turn to give him refuge.
Art not ashamed to look upon this beard? Oh, Regan, will you take her by the hand?
Why not by the hand, sir? How have I offended? All's not offence that indiscretion finds, and dotage terms so.
Oh, sides, you are too tough. Will you yet hold? How came my man at the stocks?
I set him there, sir, but his own disorders deserved much less advancement.
You? Did you?
I pray you, Father, being weak, seem so. If till the expiration of your month you will return and sojourn with my sister, dismissing half your train, come then to me. I am now from home, and out of that provision which shall be needful for your entertainment.
Return to her and 50 men dismissed. No, rather I abjure all roofs and choose to wage against the enmity of the air, to be a comrade with the wolf and owl. Necessity's a sharp pinch. Return with her? Why, the hot-blooded France that dowerless took our youngest born, I could as well be brought to knee his throne and squirrel-like pension beg to keep base life afoot. Return with her? Persuade me rather to be a slave and sumpter to this detested groom.
At your choice, sir.
I prithee, daughter, do not make me mad. I will not trouble thee, my child. Farewell. We'll no more meet, no more see one another. But yet thou art my flesh, my blood, my daughter. Or rather, a disease that's in my flesh, which I must needs call mine. Thou art a boil, a plague sore, or embossed carbuncle in my corrupted blood. But I'll not chide thee. Let shame come when it will, I do not call it. I do not bid the thunder-bearer shoot, nor tell tales of thee to high-judging Jove. Mend when thou canst, be better at thy leisure. I can be patient. I can stay with Regan, I and my 100 knights.
Not altogether so. I looked not for you yet, nor am provided for your fit welcome. Give ear, sir, to my sister, for those that mingle reason with your passion must be content to think you old, and so... But she knows what she does.
Let's do something on that now, because I want to keep that for a minute. What I want to ask Goneril and Regan to do is find something. I want you to get him to lie down and make him comfortable. And then you find sort of a piece of cloth or something, other pieces of cloth or cushions or something.
Art not ashamed to look upon this beard? Regan, will you take her by the hand?
Why not by the hand, sir? How have I offended? All's not offence that indiscretion finds, and dotage terms so.
Oh, besides, you are too tough. Will you yet hold? How came my man in the stocks?
I set him there.
Sometimes it is really instructive to do an exercise which seems to go against and contradict the motive and action in the text. It releases all sorts of ambiguities. Goneril and Regan here are trying to persuade their father to dismiss his followers. They cannot put up with his 100 knights. But in so doing, they are disempowering him, taking his identity away. So I have asked Kathy and Lolita to make Samuel comfortable and undress him gently.
Return to her and 50 men dismissed. No, rather I abjure all roofs and choose to wage against the enmity of the air, to be a comrade with the wolf and the owl. Necessity is a sharp pinch. Return with her. Why, the hot-blooded France that dowerless took our youngest born, I could as well be brought to knee his throne and squirrel like pension beg to keep base life afoot. Return with her. Persuade me rather to be slave and sumpter to this detested groom.
At your choice, sir.
I prithee, daughter, do not make me mad. I will not trouble thee, my child. Farewell. We'll no more meet, no more see one another. But yet thou art my flesh and blood, my daughter. Or rather, a disease that's in my flesh, which I must needs call mine. Thou art a boil, a plague sore, an embossed carbuncle in my corrupted blood. But I'll not chide thee. Let shame come when it will, I do not call it. I do not bid the thunder-bearer shoot, nor tell tales of thee to high-judging Jove. Mend when thou canst be better at thy leisure. I can be patient. I can stay with Regan. I and my 100 knights.
Not altogether so. I looked not for you yet, nor am provided for your fit welcome. Give ear, sir, to my sister. For those that mingle reason with your passion must be content to think you old and so, well, but she knows what she does.
Is it well spoken?
I dare avouch it, sir. What, 50 followers? Is it not well? Should you need of more? Yea, or so many sit above charge and danger speak against so great a number? How in one house should many people under 2 commands hold amity? It is hard, almost impossible.
Why might not you, my lord, receive attendance from those that she calls servants, or from mine?
Why not, my lord? If then they chance to slack ye, we could control them. If you will come to me, for now I spy a danger. I entreat you to bring but 5 and 20. To no more will I give place or notice.
I gave you all.
And in good time you gave it.
Made you my guardians, my depositaries, but kept a reservation to be followed with such a number. What, must I come to you with 5 and 20? Regan said you so?
Speak it again, my lord, no more with me.
These wicked creatures yet do look well favored when others are more wicked. Not being the worst stands in some rank of praise. I'll go with thee, yet... No, I'll go with thee. Yet double 5 and 20, and thou art twice her love.
Hear me, my lord. What need you 5 and 20, 10 or 5, to follow in a house where twice so many have a command to tend you?
What need one?
Oh, reason not the need. Our basest beggars are in the poorest thing superfluous. Allow Allow not nature what nature needs. If only to go warm were gorgeous. Oh, I'm sorry. What nature needs. Man's life is cheap as beasties. Thou art a lady. If only to go warm were gorgeous, why nature needs not what gorgeous wearest would scarcely keep thee warm. But for true need, heavens, give me patience. Patience I need. You see me here, you gods, a poor man, as full of grief as age, wretched in both. If it be you that stirs these daughters' hearts against these fathers, fool me not so much to bear it tamely. Touch me with noble anger, and let not woman's weapons water drop stain my man's cheeks. No, you unnatural hags! I will have such revenges on you both. That all the world shall... I will do such things I know not what they are yet I know not, but they shall be terrors of the earth. You think I'll weep? I'll not weep. I have full course of weeping, but this heart shall break into 100,000 flaws ere I'll weep. Oh, fool, I shall go mad. Get off.
They're taking his identity away, aren't they, all the time?
At first, he was so easy to get down. It was like he did everything we wanted him to do. He resisted.
Did he?
And I thought of spitting at him to get him to stop.
Yeah.
We don't use violence or anything, do we? But I did.
The image of putting him in bed was really brilliant, because it's like when you go to hospital, you're stripped of everything. You hand yourself over to these people who do everything for you, but also order you about.
And take yourself
Take
away,
your identity away.
don't they? And I do think that's what they do. And it's easy to play them as being evil, but actually they're survivors as well. They've got to keep him down, as they will get lost, won't they? And the wonderful, what need 5 and 20, what need 1? I mean, that's what we hear, isn't it? And then that's what sends him mad, is that they've taken everything away from him.
All of it.
You were taking his manhood away, his name away, really. It's who am I by the end, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, doing what I was asking you to do.
Depriving me of my people, my place, taking my
Those
stuff.
shoes.
Yeah, you take my stuff.
Do you know what really made me laugh is that he was standing there with one sock on and one sock off.
But he becomes wild and very strong because of that.
Yes. It's also very clear that there are definitely certain exercises that are beautiful and perfect for when you first are looking at a text, and this one is another one I think that is probably best when you're much more familiar with the script.
When you
and can just give yourself
just
totally to this
react to what is being done to you.
But it's beautiful. It's so much.
Because all these words are so very important.
The
things that he says.
Oh, what a play!
Very
I mean,
important.
the bottom line, the center line of this play is what is the cause of in nature that makes these hard hearts. I mean, it's just it tears at you.
Yes.
And then at the end when he says undo this button. It's amazing, isn't it? That going from one thing to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just, I am ever so anxious to have here a piece of modern text. This from Edward Bond's play Lear, an incredible play, a kind of deconstruct on King Lear. Listen to how the thoughts move and to the spaces between the thoughts. The rhythm is its power.
The king has been taken prisoner, and he's been forced to look into a mirror by his 2 daughters who've defeated him in battle, and he's been made to confront his identity as a mad tyrant. Yeah. No. That's not the king. This is a little cage of bars with an animal in it. No, that's not the king. Who shut that animal in that cage? Let it out. Have you seen its face behind the bars? There's a poor animal with blood on its head and tears running down its face. Who did that to it? Is it a bird or a horse? It's lying in the dust and its wings are broken. Who broke its wings? Who cut off its hands so that it can't shake the bars? It's pressing its snout on the glass. Who shut that animal in a glass cage? Oh, God, there's no pity in this world. You let it lick the blood from its hair in the corner of a cage with nowhere to hide from its tormentors. No shadow, no hole. Let that animal out of its cage. Look. Look. Have pity. Look at its claws trying to open the cage. It's dragging its broken body over the floor. You are cruel. Cruel. Look at it lying in its corner. It's shocked and cut and shaking and licking the blood on its sides. No, no. Where are they taking it now? Not out of my sight. What will they do to it? Oh, God, give it to me. Let me hold it and stroke it and wipe its blood. No!
It's wonderful.
The imagination tells him the truth when he's using all his powers to deny it or to keep it down. But it rises in front of him and he's left with this tortured image, which is the truth. The part of everybody that's like a little wounded animal, which he has spent his life denying. And which he finally sees in this, when he's forced to look into the mirror, when he's defeated, and he has nothing left.
Andrew and I have done a few workshops with writers in the last 3 or 4 years. They've come and we've worked on Shakespeare with them, like people like Howard Brenton and, you know, really well-established writers. They've brought a piece of their work and the actors, actors have worked on on the pieces. What the actors understood from it is that a writer does not think of an image and think of a logical thing through. An image comes to the writer from somewhere. It can be from out there, it can be from inside, from all sorts of places. And they hold on to that image and then something logical happens and then they put it into, you know, a form and into a story. But it so often comes from an image from nowhere, from something quite else. And it's a very good thing to hold on to, because I think actors have to work that way too. But you obviously have to interchange between that and then making the logical story. Could you just do that one, if we all get up and do it one more time? And you do it one more time, so we hear it. And just get round him. And maybe use us as your mirror. But in fact, we can turn away from him if he comes to us.
No. That's not the king. This is a little cage of bars with an animal in it. No, no. That's not the king. Who shot that animal in that cage? Let it out. Have you seen its face behind the bars? There's a poor animal with blood on its head and tears running down its face. Who did that to it? Is it a bird or a horse? It's
lying in the dust and its wings are broken. Who broke its wings? Who cut off its hands so that it can't shake the bars? It's pressing its snout on the glass. Who shut that animal in a glass cage? Oh, God, there's no pity in this world. You let it lick the blood from its hair in the corner of a cage with nowhere to hide from its tormentors. No shadow, no hole. Let that animal out of its cage! Look! Look! Have pity! Look at its claws trying to open the cage! It's dragging its broken body over the floor. You are cruel! Cruel! Look at it lying in its corner. It's shocked and cut and bleeding and licking the blood on its sides. No. Where are they taking it from? Not out of my sight. What will they do to it? Oh, God, give it to me. Let me hold it and stroke it and wipe its blood. No! No! Ah!
Brilliant. Can you feel that? Right.
Yeah.
And the muscularity of that language. Now, it is those spaces between words, allowing them to drop in, allowing them to do that, which then feeds thought, which then feeds feeling, emotion, if you like, and that. Shall we break it there then? That's great. Thank you. I was talking to Edward Bond the other day, and he said something really interesting. Well, he always does. It went something like this. When you are writing, the character is breathing differently. Phrasing and everything depends on the breathing. Breathing takes priority over everything. Voice is a part of the body as much as hands or arms. The way you are breathing is what authenticates, not physical effort. And it should not surprise us that the same instincts which lie behind the playwright's original thoughts are precisely what we have been working on here today with our study of the language and the structure of their speeches to find out how they inform character and character relationships. Tape 4 is a compilation of the voice work which we did at intervals throughout the workshop. It includes exercises on breathing and rooting the voice, exercises on consonant muscularity and opening the vowels, and on head and chest resonance, and the resonance throughout the body. And you see these exercises put to practical use. It really tells the background story of these videos.